Chapter 397. The second negotiation took place in front of the gate of the Black and White House. Little White put Gerald Dane on the island, and Danny did not show up. Then, Blackie informed Bizarro and the kind man of the new negotiation location. They were a little shocked. They did not expect the Dragon Queen to go to the Black and White House. The three quickly reached 4 agreements. The first 2 were very fair. The gold royals from Slave Bay would be deposited into the Iron Treasury, and the handling fee would be reduced from 13.5% to 13%. The Iron Treasury would act as a middleman for the grain, and the price of grain would rise by 30% above the highest price, which was the Iron Treasury's commission. Of course, they could earn more or less, it all depended on the Iron Treasury's methods. They only needed to give enough grain to the Dragon Queen 5 years later. Danny did not expect to receive any grain. The long night was coming. Who would sell the life-saving grain? The Iron Treasury would encourage the people of the Western continent to grow grain in the next 5 years. Just like Guanzhong buying deer to defeat Chu, Danny's goal would be achieved. As for the benefits, it would probably only give Danny peace of mind. Knowing that the long night was coming, she would do her best to save people. Not mentioning how much she could save, she had a clear conscience. The last 2 terms were the result of a compromise between the 2 sides. The Dragon Queen received a large fleet for free. A ready-made fleet and tens of thousands of tons of supplies. Bravos tried to reduce the risk of breaking the oath and violating the guests' rights. At the same time, they received the Dragon Queen's forgiveness. She would no longer send her eldest son to fall from the sky and chat about daily life in the sky of Bravos. At the end of the negotiation, the people of Bravos escorted the leaders of the coup, including Copernicus and Cantona, who were bruised and covered in dirt, to let the wings of death judge them. They would be sprayed with dragon flames to vent for the Dragon Queen. Danny refused. Mother said that this is the internal affairs of Bravos, she will not interfere. And Copernicus's father, old Arathorn, once invited her to a meal, so she has to forgive Sir Copernicus. If possible, let him continue to be the Sea King, Dahe said in a rumbling voice as it flew in the air. Copernicus, who had been ashen-faced, immediately came back to life. He knelt on the ground and thanked the Dragon Queen for sparing his life. He also talked about his friendship with little Danny when he was young. They had a meal together. Finally, he made a sincere promise that as long as he was the Sea King, he would strive to maintain the traditional friendship between Bravos and Targaryen. Even Gerald Dane was disgusted, not to mention Bersallo and the kind man. After signing the agreement, Big Black flew to Slaver's Bay, Little White returned to Dragonstone Island, and Gerald Dane would lead the fleet to the East Sea. That night, Dragonstone Island, in the drawing room at the top of the Stone Drum Tower. It was a circular room with 4 tall, narrow windows facing east, west, north and south. There was a strangely shaped long wooden table in the room. A detailed map of the 7 kingdoms was carved on the table. It was almost a miniature Westeros of the same scale. The map table was 15 meters long. At the location of Dragonstone Island on the map, there was a seat overlooking the entire map. Aegon had sat here to think about his plan to conquer the western continent. That's more or less it. Danny sat at the head of the table and told Barristan what had happened in Bravos. There were only the 2 of them in the huge room. Danny was still a spiritual projection. In reality, Barristan was alone. Can Big Black really speak? Barristan thought carefully for a while, still in disbelief. If she could obtain the loyalty of Sharphorn City, then Danny might be able to seal off the throat and prevent trade between the King's Landing and the other side of the narrow waterway. And Baraman of Sharphorn City was not only a noble, he was also one of the few direct vassals of Dragonstone Island. Did you forget that at the Great Wall, Stannis' army had a blue swordfish flag? Danny said hesitantly. The blue swordfish was the insignia of the Count of Sharphorn City. Yes, Count Duran's uncle joined Stannis' army and went to the Great Wall, but this does not affect Sharphorn City's loyalty to you. I don't want his loyalty. The more territory, the greater the responsibility. Dany said. I understand. Barristan nodded. Other than Count Duran, there were many other nobles who sent letters to discuss their loyalty. The King's Landing, Hajien, Dorne, the Valley. There might be spies from the Iron Throne among them. But you did not intend to conquer the Westeros immediately, so I rejected all the nobles' offers to pledge their allegiance. I also explained your plan to them one by one. You will not fight for the Iron Throne before the next summer. Also, if someone really ends the long night, you will also pledge your allegiance to him. Dany waved her hand. I will not pledge my allegiance. The Duke of Dragonstone Island will be passed to my descendants. She did not even want the Iron Throne, how could she become a vassal of the Westeros? Speaking of descendants. Barristan asked hesitantly. Since you know that the kingdom needs descendants to inherit it, why did you reject Count Sitiga's marriage plan? I feel that heir Sitiga is not bad. He is capable and good-looking. His family background is also worthy of you. Most importantly, he values honor and is a qualified knight. Just because his name is Aerys, he was eliminated in the first round. Dany gave a strange smile. Ugh, this reason is too. Barristan's face twisted. I'm afraid Count Sitiga will not accept it. If I have to satisfy every vassal, then why should I be a queen? Sitiga is different. Barristan emphasized. Do you think I will sacrifice myself for Sitiga? Your Majesty, no one can force you to choose Sir Sitiga. Don't worry about this. If the long night cannot pass, there is no point in having 4 generations under one roof. After the long night, I am still young and have plenty of time. After that, Dany asked again, what's the reaction from the King's Landing? On the 3rd day after we took down Dragonstone Island, Kevan Lannister returned to the King's Landing and quickly took control of the Imperial Conference, replacing Cersei as the regent. He is currently trying to reach an understanding with House Tyrell. At the very least, the food from River Bend is being transported to the King's Landing along the Monde River. The High Court doesn't believe in the other ghosts. Dany frowned. Whether they believe it or not, the King's Landing is short of food. As long as the High Court wants to continue playing this game of power with Lannister, they can only transport food over. Otherwise, Tommen's rule will collapse and the Tyrells' previous investments will all go down the drain. After a pause, Barristan continued, actually, this is good too. Food is finally circulating in the 7 kingdoms. If the High Court is short of food, they will at least hurry up and plant another batch of food. Dany sighed. Now I understand why the Great Sparrow did not keep her promise and only bought 500,000 gold royals worth of food from the free cities. Continue, what else did Kevan do? He personally went to the Great Cathedral of Baelor to meet the Great Sparrow and persuade the church to support Tommen's rule. Dany nodded and praised, not bad. He really cleaned up the mess that Cersei made. With the army and food from River Bend and the church's support, if not for my sudden appearance, Tommen's throne would have been secured. Your Majesty, Kevan also considered your influence and sent a letter to Dragonstone Island as soon as he arrived at King's Landing. Barristan said strangely. Oh. Dany's interest was piqued and she quickly asked, what did he say? First, he promised to redeem Sir Rake. Yes, 5,000 gold royals, not one less. He also acknowledged Targaryen's ownership of Dragonstone Island. No matter who sits on the Iron Throne in the end, Dragonstone Island will always be the land of the Targaryens. Then, on behalf of Lannister and the Iron Throne, he accepted your promise to end the other ghosts as king. He also promised that after the chaos in Taimin is quelled and the sea route to the north is reopened, Casterly Rock will ship a batch of supplies from Lannister Harbor to the Shadow Tower. If you don't block the sea route, you will also ship a batch of refugees from King's Landing to the Great Wall as night watchers. But he asked you to abide by the oath you made at the Great Wall. You will not take the initiative to become enemies with any noble or king who supports the Great Wall. In other words, you can't attack the west and the areas under King's Landing's control. He has a good plan. He used this method to buy time and stabilize the chaotic situation in King's Landing. Dany sneered. Barristan nodded and sighed. I can see his purpose. He even knows that we can guess his purpose. But if you break the oath, he will only be happier. No matter how many messenger crows the City of Knowledge sends out, there are only a few nobles in the Seven Kingdoms who believe that you violated the guest's rights. Even Kevin said in his letter that he and Lannister both thought that the City of Knowledge was lying. In fact, the people of the Seven Kingdoms can't find a reason for you to go against the City of Knowledge. But the oath on the Great Wall is known by too many people. If you really become an oath-breaker, all your enemies will be overjoyed. Why should I break the oath? The one who ends the long night is king. If they can't do it, it will be useless even if Lannister can build an iron bucket. If they can do it, let them be king. Dany said with a faint smile. King's Landing was a huge problem. One touch and you would get shit on your hands. She didn't even want Sharphorn City, which was next to Dragonstone Island, so why would she get involved in that mess? Besides, even if Lannister was better at killing than Arya and really ended the long night, it didn't mean that Dany would give up on the blood feud between Targaryen and Lannister. Barristan suddenly became serious and said, Your Majesty, Sir Kevin is very rational. The Iron Throne and Dragonstone Island won't be in conflict for the time being. But Cersei, that crazy woman, will be released soon. At that time. Chapter 398. Barristan explained, when Sir Kevin returned to King's Landing, the first thing he did was not to rescue Cersei. First, he tried to become the regent, then he resolved the conflict between Lannister, Tyrell, and Dragonstone Island, and then the conflict between the Iron Throne and the Church. Only after he stabilized his power as the regent did he try to get Cersei out of the cathedral. Cersei is crazy. When she regains power over King's Landing, she may not be as considerate as Sir Kevin. We have to be careful. So what if Cersei is compared to Braavos? No matter how crazy she is, I can still make her wake up, Dany said coldly. The White Knight said, maybe not. Cersei, like Queen Marjorie, did not escape trial. She was only released on bail and will continue to be tried by the Church. Also, Queen Cersei admitted to having. At this point, the White Knight's face was full of shame, as if it was difficult to continue. In the end, under Dany's curious gaze, he stammered, Cersei had an affair with the White Knight, Osfriel, Kate, and Blake, the three brothers. Sigh, what kind of world is this? The White Knight stomped his feet and wailed. Dany was focusing on the wrong thing. The three brothers, speaking of which, why didn't I see such an exciting scene in Game of Thrones? Was she watching the edited version of Game of Thrones? I don't remember the Kate and Blake brothers being in the plot. Queen Cersei was charged with 4 crimes. 1. Infidelity, having an affair with her cousin, Lancel, Kate and Blake, and I don't know who. 2. Blasphemy, she ordered the Kate and Blake brothers to murder the Archbishop, who was the predecessor of the Great Sparrow. 3. Murder of King Robert. 4. Incest with Jaime, using her bastard son to occupy the Iron Throne that belonged to Theon Baela. Queen Cersei was very smart. She admitted to the first crime of infidelity, but refused to admit to the last 3. Infidelity did not take her life. The Church would only sentence her to be paraded through the streets. Any one of the last 3 could consign her to eternal damnation. However, Lancel Lannister has already converted to the 7 gods. He was also involved in the assassination of the king. He has already told the Archbishop all his secrets. Your Majesty, do you remember Lancel? How could she forget the one-armed hero who put a hat on Jaime's head? Dany nodded. The one-armed commander of the beggar army was the big sparrow he took me to see. He was a very pious and promising young man. Ah! The corner of Barristan's mouth twitched. What kind of future would a disabled person who was only 18 years old have if he was as old and dispirited as an 80-year-old? The previous archbishop was murdered because Lancel went to the Holy Cathedral to confess his sins. Circe killed him to silence him. Obviously, Lancel also told the big sparrow the secret. Under normal circumstances, with both witnesses and evidence, Circe would not be able to escape. Why did Circe keep Lancel around and tell everyone about her bad deeds? If she wanted to silence someone, she should have killed Lancel. Killing the archbishop would not solve the root of the problem, Danny said. Maybe she couldn't find a chance. Lancel joined the congregation of the poor and has a large army of beggars around her. It's useless. Even if there are witnesses and evidence, Circe can easily escape the trial, Danny said with a sigh. Oh, how so? The trial will be held in the Holy Cathedral. The nobles, the monks, and the people of King's Landing will all be witnesses. Lancel will definitely testify against Circe in front of everyone. What else can Circe do but use force to subdue the church? Trial by martial arts. Baristan was stunned as well. Trial by martial arts was the biggest loophole in the Westeros legal system. Or rather, it was a loophole that the people who made the law deliberately left for the nobles. Even if Robert was resurrected by the Lord of Light, he would not be able to convict his wife, let alone Lancel, as long as Circe won the trial by martial arts. Trial by martial arts was a tradition of the Undulls. The Church of the Seven not only approved of the trial by martial arts, but also created an even more sacred Tournament of the Seven, a 7-person team that would hold a trial by martial arts. They believed that the 7 gods would decide who was the real sinner. What was more hilarious was that during the reign of Meg the Cruel, Meg rode a dragon and burned the Holy Cathedral, slaughtering the monks and the church's armed forces like pigs and dogs. In the end, Meg the Cruel won the Tournament of the Seven against the Knights of the Sword, the Sons of War. The 7 most powerful and devout Knights of the Sword all died in battle, and Meg won the Tournament of the Seven. Meg did not even ride a dragon. She rode a horse in the tournament, completely following the tradition of the Church of the Seven. It was hard to imagine how crazy the Archbishop of the Church of the Seven must have been. It was obvious that the church would be slapped in the face again. Circe had an invincible existence under her command, the complete Magic Mountain. Even Danny did not have the confidence to defeat the true Magic Mountain in a one-on-one duel, much less the Big Sparrow who was lacking in talents. Thinking about this, Danny felt that the plot of Circe blowing up the Holy Cathedral in Game of Thrones was a little illogical. Circe had the confidence to clear her name through the normal way, so why did she, blowing up the Holy Cathedral and escaping the trial? It meant that her crime was confirmed. It was like a person who could win a lawsuit but ran away with innocence. Could it be that Circe had also awakened the Mad Blood? The Mad Blood was not a gene, but a virus that was hidden on the Iron Throne. Anyone who sat on it would be infected. It was obvious that before becoming the king of the Westeros, the Targaryen had been passed down for at least 6,000 years. It was obvious that during the 6,000 years in Valeglia, the Targaryens were not crazy at all. Who would dare to go crazy in the face of the powerful Great Wizard and the 14 Fire Peak families? But once they ascended the Iron Throne, almost every generation of Targaryens would have someone awaken the Mad Blood gene. What was the reason for this? When is Circe's parade? Danny suddenly asked with great interest. 3 days later in the morning. You want to see it? Baristan asked with a strange expression. You don't want to see the naked Empress Dowager? Circe was known as the most beautiful woman in the world back then. No, I don't want to see it at all. Baristan hurriedly waved his hand. It's okay. You can ride Whitey there. Wear a pair of binoculars and go quietly. Danny encouraged. The old knight's face turned red and quickly changed the topic. Your Majesty, the first batch of Dragon's Heart has been mined. Do you want to see it? As he spoke, he walked to the narrow window on the east side and pointed at a windowless stone house that was lit up. We captured more than 30 Lannister soldiers. The price was too high, 10 gold royals for each soldier. Kevin did not redeem them. Count Bronn left them in the volcanic grotto to mine the dragon's heart. Count Valerian and Count Sedega brought 5 blacksmiths and more than 30 blacksmith apprentices from their territories. They are forging dragon's hard weapons day and night. Dany's body disappeared from the throne on the map table like a phantom and appeared beside the White Knight. The castle on Dragonstone Island was built in the style of the Megalosaurus. For example, the kitchen was a dragon curled up in a ball. The smoke and steam from the oven came out of its nostrils. The hall was a dragon lying on the ground. People entered through its huge open mouth. The stone drum tower was built on top of the dragon mountain. It was like a megalosaurus with its head held high. The stone drum tower was the dragon's torso. The map hall was at the dragon's head. The 2 wings of the stone dragon were spread out. There was a blacksmith's shop, a stable, and a warehouse. At this time, the blacksmith's shop on the left wing of the stone dragon was brightly lit. It was steaming hot. The sound of hammering could be heard. Occasionally, the blacksmith's loud scolding of his apprentices could be heard. Opposite the megalosaurus-shaped stone drum tower, there was a 10-meter-tall circular stone tower. It looked like a coiling dragon coiling around a stone pillar. That was the dungeon tower. Between the stone drum tower and the dungeon tower was an arched stone bridge in the air. The dungeon tower also had lights. Sometimes, there was the sound of metal wheels being dragged on the rails. The castle on Dragonstone Island was built on top of a low volcano called Dragon Mountain. There was a passage in the dungeon tower that led to the interior of Dragon Mountain. The Targaryen ancestors had also built a full set of mining facilities. There were mines, rails, and human-powered mine carts. The entire castle on Dragonstone Island was built using Valeglia's stone craftsmanship. The mining facilities were also copied from the mines of the 14th Fire Peak. It was extremely sturdy. 300 years later, it was still working well. No one knew what Targaryen was trying to dig for on Dragonstone Island. After 100 years, he had dug from Dragon Mountain to the bottom of the sea. Half of the mountain below the castle was empty. The reason why the stone drum tower was called that was because every time a storm came, the waves would surge violently and cause a rumbling sound in the castle, like the beating of a drum. Because the bottom was empty, it was like putting a bowl upside down in a basin of water. When the water rippled, there would definitely be a dull sound in the bowl. The waves were beating on the stone drum. Dany had also been to the bottom of the mine. It was mostly filled with dragon crystal and iron ore. The ratio was about 6:4, with dragon crystal taking up 60%. The amount of precious metals such as gold and silver was almost zero. She had no idea what Targaryen was trying to dig from the mine. She asked old Ymont and he didn't know either. If they didn't deal with the other ghosts, Dragonstone Island had no value at all. Are there enough miners? Dany asked. Yes. Count Valerian also recruited 100 farmers on Tidehead Island. The key is that the dragon crystal doesn't need to be refined. The more they mine, the more dragon crystal weapons can be made. The blacksmiths are completely busy, otherwise they wouldn't have to work overtime. How much is the daily production of dragon crystal weapons? Dany asked again. The standard mold you designed is very suitable for making dragon crystal weapons. After the dragon crystal is melted and poured into the mold, it cools and takes shape very quickly. If we focus on making arrowheads, we can produce at least 2,000 arrowheads a day. If we focus on making weapons, we can make about 100 short swords. It's still a little low. Arrange for people to go to King's Landing to recruit a group of blacksmiths and expand the production. Dragon crystal weapons were brittle and hard, and their lifespan was extremely short. When the night came, the consumption rate would be very fast. Oh, right. Dany's heart skipped a beat. She remembered that there was a very good blacksmith in King's Landing who had mastered the technique of recasting steel swords. Do you still remember Brittany's Oathkeeper sword? Yes, the House of Stark's Ice was recast by Tywin into two long swords, Joffrey's Widow's Howl and Brittany's Oathkeeper sword. Ha, the Widow's Howl, it's so fitting. Catelyn in the Red Wedding and Cersei in the Purple Wedding were both widows. They both let out the most desperate and sorrowful wails as mothers. Dany said with a strange expression. Your Majesty, you want to find Master Blacksmith Tobu Mott? Barristan asked in surprise. Tell Bronn that no matter what, he must invite Blacksmith Tobu to Dragonstone Island. I also need a set of tied head armor. Dany laughed. Chapter 399. Dany decided to go to King's Landing 3 days later to see Cersei's Mimi. Just as she was hesitating whether to send Whitey to be a bystander or send Blackie to chat with the people of King's Landing about the Empress Dowager's health, Marwyn, who was chewing on a piece of sour grass, contacted her urgently. Yes, it was Professor Marwyn from the City of Knowledge. He, Black Sister Larissa, and the Fifth White Knight, Grey Iron, Garth Hyder were all on Old Town's grain purchasing fleet. Every night, Dany had two fixed tasks. First, she would give Kuei-shi a soul-cleansing true dragon roar. Then, she would use the glass candle to search for traces of Marwyn, One-Eyed Faceless, and Jia Kun for 3 minutes. As for the two Faceless, needless to say, Dany wished she could keep an eye on them at all times. It would be best if she could find all the Faceless strongholds. As for Marwyn, it was just a routine search. Most of the time, Dany could not find him because he was not online at all. Marwyn and Dany had an agreement. If there was an accident, he would activate the glass candle and contact her at a fixed time at night. After all, Hyder's grain purchasing fleet had dozens of ships, 3 million gold royals, and the magic books that Old Town had found in the City of Knowledge. If they were robbed by pirates, the loss would be huge. Her worries were not groundless. The Stone Steps Archipelago was the world's most notorious pirate den. It was the entrance to the Narrow Sea, which fed pirates from all over the world. Even Tywin often went to the Stone Steps Archipelago to train his pirate skills. For example, Yuluen had been a pirate on the Stone Steps Archipelago when you were young. Asha Greyjoy had also been on the Stone Steps Archipelago for 3 to 5 years. As soon as Hyder's fleet left the Summer Sea, they were targeted by pirates. In Old Town negotiated the price with the grain merchant on the other side of the Narrow Sea and confirmed the quantity of grain. Then, the grain purchasing fleet would transport the gold over. The grain merchant would then start to distribute the grain from the small merchants and farm owners. Once Hyder's gold was transported to Myr and Pentos, the trading princes of Myr and Pentos would also transfer the grain to the port. It was just in time to fulfill the last part of the contract in Myr and Pentos, one hand for the money, one hand for the goods. In other words, the news of Hathor transporting gold to the trading city-states had long spread throughout the Narrow Sea. Even the people of Braavos in the north knew about it. In fact, Hathor's large-scale purchase of grain had caused the price of grain to skyrocket by 5 times. During the day, Dany's spiritual projection and Jarrow were in Braavos. During the evening, Dany's spiritual projection and Barristan were on Dragonstone Island. At midnight, Dany's spiritual projection crossed 6,000 kilometers through the glass candle and arrived at the captain's cabin of the White Tower at the entrance of the Narrow Sea. Just like what Dany had said to Stannis that day, unlike some kings who had too much time on their hands and could only grind their teeth to pass the time, the Dragon Queen was really busy. What's the situation? Dany's voice was erratic, like a mobile phone with bad signal. It was not just her voice. Even her spiritual projection was a blurry silver-gray figure. It was like a 150-inch 8K LCD screen playing a low-resolution VCD. This was because the distance was too far. Dany had announced that she had gone to Braavos, but her real body had been hiding in Slaves Bay to comprehend the Song of Wind. There were only 3 people in the small captain's cabin. The bullneck Marvin, the embarrassed White Knight Garth Hyder, and the magic apprentice Larissa. Marvin and Garth looked at each other. In the end, the White Knight stepped forward and bowed. He said, "One day after leaving Sun Halberd City, there was a fast-paddling ship following behind us. It was just that Hyder's fleet was too large for the pirates to handle, so they did not attack immediately. When the fleet gets close to Broken Arm Corner, more and more pirates will surround us. There will definitely be a huge battle. How many ships do you have? How many sailors do you have?" Danny asked. "More than 100. Most of them are flat-bottomed sailing ships with a capacity of 200 tons. They are coastal cargo ships. The number of longships and warships with hammers does not exceed 10. The number of sailors is less than 2,000, the second son of the Hyder family said. "If I came to save you, there would be no way to hide the fact that Count Hyder has sided with me," Danny said with a smile. On one hand, the old man of Old Town sought refuge with the Dragon Queen to ensure the future prosperity of his family. On the other hand, he was unwilling to immediately raise his flag against the Iron Throne, especially since his lord, High Court Tyrell, was on the side of Lannister. Garth remembered his father's request and could not help but lower his head in shame. He blushed and said, "My father has considered this. He asked you to pretend to be a pirate and hijack this fleet." "What?" Danny suspected that she was hearing things. She said uncertainly, "You asked me to rob you as a pirate?" Gray iron, Garth's face turned as red as Monkey's butt. He mumbled, "Your Majesty, you did not hear wrongly. Everyone in the world knows that the Hyder family has ordered 3 million gold royals worth of food from the Free City. So, the pirates of the Narrow Sea swarmed over, intending to rob the ships of the gold royals. When you knew about this, you also..." "Ah, I'm sorry." Garth could not continue. He closed his eyes and apologized awkwardly. "Your Majesty, I'm very sorry. My father, even if he did not meet the pirates at the Stone Steps Archipelago, he would have asked you to stop the fleet at Blackwater Bay." "All right, I understand." Danny ended her knight's embarrassing situation at the right time and comforted him. "You don't have to apologize. Count Hyder is only protecting the peace of Old Town and the hundreds of thousands of people in Hyder's territory from being affected by the war." "Your Majesty." Garth's blue eyes widened. He was very touched. 10,000 years ago, at the end of the First Era, there was a land bridge known as the Arm of Dorne that connected the Westeros Dorne and the disputed land of Ursos together. When the ancestors invaded the Westeros through the Wall of Dorne, the Green Prophet of the Children of the Forest joined forces to cast powerful magic. They shattered the land bridge, which was hundreds of kilometers wide and thousands of kilometers long, into countless islands of different sizes, which became the Stone Steps Archipelago today. The Stone Steps Archipelago was located at the entrance of the Narrow Sea. Half of the world's sea trade ships would pass through here. With such a golden route, even Valeglia occupied one of the islands and built a free fortress Tarosai. One of the islands was called the Torture Abyss. It might not be the largest island, but it had a port comparable to Tarosai's. It was a hot afternoon at the Torture Abyss port. Blue sky, white clouds, and a warm northeast wind. Waves came from the shore, wave after wave, gently buffering the hull of the ship that was painted with a new brown paint. Woo woo woo, the bugle horn sounded at the port. The sailors busied themselves in the sun. Some twisted the lock and pulled the anchor out of the sea. Some sailors pulled up the white sails under the command of the first mate. Thousands of rowers put their oars into the sea and paddled the wooden oars rhythmically to the beat of the drums. 10 gigantic warships lined up at the port. The white sails were pulled up slowly, and they slowly sailed toward the vast sea outside the port. Hiss! Suddenly, a dragon's roar shook the sky. Then, the sailors on the deck felt a shadow slide over their heads. They looked up and saw a black dragon with a wingspan of more than 10 meters emerging from the white clouds. It flew over the heads of the 10 gigantic warships one by one. "Ah, dragon, magic dragon. The sailors screamed crazily. It was unknown whether it was excitement, fear, or both. The mother of dragons is here. Quick, quick, set up the ballista. A captain on the bridge shouted hurriedly. Seeing that his subordinates were still greedily looking up at the megalosaurus, he stomped his feet anxiously and scolded, "What are you all doing? We're pirates. Someone like the mother of dragons won't even let a slave owner go. Why would she come here to look at the scenery? She's probably here to get rid of a scourge for the people. We're the scourge." Woo woo woo. Just then, a slow and drawn-out bugle call came from the flagship, followed by flag signal, "Do not act rashly, and do not do anything hostile. I am the eldest son of the mother dragon, Danny Rise." The black dragon's voice was loud, like a clap of thunder. It made the pirates below dizzy. "Ah, a dragon can speak." The pirates were stunned. "I am the holy light, I am the mighty dragon of heaven, I am..." Blackie's title was now longer than his mother's. He spoke a long sentence in a dignified manner, not caring if the people below remembered it. "Is the pirate leader below Orion Vishui?" Blackie the sky dragon began to get to the point. At this time, the warships that were preparing to leave the bay had stopped moving. When the rowers heard the megalosaurus voice, they put down their long oars and climbed out of their cabins to the deck, looking up in surprise. "I am Orion Vishui, the great megalosaurus of the holy light, the mighty dragon of heaven. I am willing to serve Her Majesty Danny Rise. I am the illegitimate child of Tidehead Island. My father was the previous Count Valerian. I am willing to pledge my loyalty to Targaryen." On the bridge of the flagship, a young man with shoulder-length silver hair waved his arms wildly at the sky as he shouted loudly. Without waiting for Blackie to say the purpose of this trip, the illegitimate child of Tidehead Island raised his hands in surrender. Even the Dragon Queen in Blackie's mind stopped working and was stunned. On the day they left the wall, Danny had spent a night on Tidehead Island. During that time, apart from talking about her experience on the wall, she also had a short conversation with the young Count Monterey. Monterey told the Dragon Queen that he was not the only son of Valerian. He had an adult illegitimate uncle, Orion Vishui, who was leading Cersei's galleons as a pirate on the Stonestep archipelago. He called himself the Vishui King. There were two main reasons why the megalosaurus was killed. First, the ballista bolts came from the blind spot of the megalosaurus's vision. Naturally, it would not dodge them. Third, the ballista bolts were too dense. Even if the megalosaurus saw them, it would not be able to dodge them. The second level of the dragon's spirit could solve the above problems to a certain extent. Although it was not 100%, it could at least solve 70% to 80% of the problems. Little White had a panoramic view of the battlefield near Dahe and had locked onto almost every ballista. Under the dynamic view, it could even see some of the ballista bolts flying towards Dahe. The second level of the dragon spirit could transmit all the scenes that Little White saw to Dahe. In this way, Dahe was like Leo in the Matrix, flying leisurely. Its body swayed left and right, and it easily dodged all the ballista bolts and some of the bows. Well, there were many archers. It was impossible to dodge all of them. However, as long as it was not shot in the eyes, Dahe's scales would at most shatter and 1 or 2 drops of hot dragon blood would spill. Well, it even imitated Smaug's evil tone. This kind of defensive power was far worse than Smaug's. Moreover, Dahe knew the distribution of firepower on the battlefield. He knew where there were more arrows and where there were fewer arrows. To put it simply, Dahe was not fighting alone. Danny and Little White were with him. One helped to open the map, and the other helped to design the tactics. Black Dragon was in an invincible state. Of course, if they were facing a regular navy, Danny would definitely not dare to be so arrogant. First of all, pirates often fought with ships. Otherwise, how could they rob? They did not have and did not need advanced dragon-slaying crossbows. Even the ballista only had 2 fixed at the bow and stern. Secondly, the pirate fleet did not have a battle formation. They were almost all in a straight line, or there was no formation at all. Therefore, during Dahe's attack, they could not support each other. When all the pirates surrendered, Little White landed and sent White Knight Barristan to the deck of the flagship of Dimensional Water King. White Knight would represent the Dragon Queen and carry out an honorable reorganization of this dishonorable fleet. Dany was not a real pirate king. Why would she need pirate followers? Under the true dragon flag, there was only a righteous army. Including the 6,000 Westeros navy under the command of Dimensional Water King, all the pirates recruited from the Stone Steps archipelago would be reorganized. Under the leadership of the only true knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Barristan, they would be transformed into a royal navy with great chivalry. Yes, although Dimensional Water King's fleet only had 10 galleons, there were 6,000 sailors serving on them. The number was more than the number of sailors in Hyder and Geralt Dane's fleet. Because they were the royal navy that led the Iron Throne. Not only did they have sailors who rowed and steered, but they also had professional archers, sword-shield soldiers on deck, and armored assault soldiers. They were mercenary knights, bankrupt farmers, poachers, and thieves from the royal territory and the Stormlands. Many of them should have been sent to the Great Wall as night watchmen, but Dimensional Water King stopped them midway and made them sailors. Dany had to admit that the illegitimate son of Tidal Island was quite capable. In less than half a year, not only did he build 10 galleons from scratch, he was also able to take over Cersei's royal navy. The 10 galleons betrayed Cersei and the Iron Throne with him. From the glorious royal soldiers, they became pirates of the Stone Steps archipelago. This guy's charisma and personal ability were stronger than Song Jiang's. When Song Jiang recruited people, he often destroyed their families and forced them to go to Liangshan when they had nowhere else to go. Dimensional Water King seduced Cersei while supervising the construction of the galleons, rebuilding the royal navy, fighting for power with Grand Scholar Pycelle. Pycelle always wanted to stop Dimensional Water from controlling the navy, and also winning over the hearts of his subordinates. Unfortunately, Orion Dimensional Water's character was not good and could not be trusted completely. The Dragon Queen seemed to have really become Zhuge Kongming and really treated Dimensional Water King as Wei Yan. Alright, the Dragon Queen was slightly better than Zhuge Kongming. At least she would not be like Kongming, who would say, Dimensional Water has a rebellious bone behind his head. He will definitely be disloyal in the future. Be careful, be careful. She even said it in front of Wei Yan. On the contrary, that night, during the meeting where all the captains were gathered, she even used a spiritual projection to disguise her true body. She pointed at the bastard of Tidehead Island sincerely and said to everyone, "This is Valerian, who has the same bloodline as my ancestor. Valerian, a loyal subject of Targaryen for generations. Sir Orion, the representative of Tidehead Island, is naturally my most trusted subject." Dimensional Water was so emotional that he shed tears on the spot. Targaryen of Dragonstone Island, Valerian of Tidehead Island, Setiga of Crab Island, and all the knights from the royal domain and the Stormlands. This scene was almost like yesterday, exactly the same as when Aegon conquered the Seven Kingdoms. We will also walk the path of glory of our ancestors. No, our goal is even greater. The Westeros are definitely not our limit. So, we cannot continue to be pirates. Pirates are destroyers, not rulers. We will never be able to conquer the world. So, our team must be reformed. Sir Barristan, the noblest White Knight, the only Grand Knight with pure chivalry left in today's Westeros, will lead everyone to glory and create glory. What do you think? The Dragon Queen looked at Dimensional Water with a trusting gaze. Your Majesty is right, very right. We cannot be pirates. We are the Royal Navy under the Queen. Orion nodded. Then, the Honorable Barristan, as everyone expected, became the head of the pirates. Then, the mission of robbing Hyder's fleet was handed over to the White Knight. Before the old knight complained with a conflicted expression, Danny gave him another less honorable mission. I am not at ease with Orion. The 10 captains on Circe's ship, do not touch them. Choose a group of pirates who you think are the most righteous and honorable. Train them well. Then, find a chance to assign them to the captured pirate ships. They will be the captain, first mate, second mate, or navigator. Slowly dilute Orion's influence in the Royal Navy. Then, without giving the old knight any time to react, Blackie took off and she disappeared. The pirates thought that she had left on a dragon. I can't do it. The White Knight stood in a daze, muttering in a daze. Blackie did not return to Slaver's Bay. With the addition of the Royal Navy on the Stone Steps archipelago, Whitey's mission became even more arduous. Every other day, it would fly back and forth between Dragonstone Island and the Torture Abyss. The mission of observing Mimi the Color Queen could only be completed by Blackie. 5 days ago, in the great cathedral of Baylor. Stone Prison. Uncle and niece sat facing each other. I have no idea what you are thinking. Sir Kevin looked at his haggard niece in linen clothes. The sharpness in his blue eyes was slowly replaced by helplessness and exhaustion. Didn't the scholar teach you history? Actually, even without the scholar's teaching, you should know about the rebellion of the church during Meg I's time. Meg had a dragon and an army of 100,000, but he was still badly battered by the church's armed forces. Where did you get the confidence to be more? In order to defeat the church's armed forces, he rode a dragon and set the great cathedral on fire. He put a bounty on the head of the son of war at the price of 1 gold royal per scalp. In terms of brutality, in terms of strength, in terms of wisdom, which part of you can compare to him? It was not easy for Targaryen to suppress the power of the church, so that the archbishop could no longer interfere with the kingdom's political power, but you. He slapped his forehead and groaned, 7 gods above, I never thought that stupidity would have no limit. I saved 1,000,000 gold royals for the Iron Throne. Cersei retorted. Chapter 401. Compared to when Tywin was still alive, Kevin Lannister had aged a lot. He was still tall, with broad shoulders and a round waist, but his once sparse short blonde hair had fallen off his forehead. His brother had died tragically, his second nephew had killed his father, his eldest nephew had gone missing, his niece had turned into the Mad King III, the second was Joffrey, otherworldly ghosts had appeared on the wall, Dragonstone Island had changed owners, and the Targaryens had returned, and his eldest son, Lancel, had given up his title and fief to become the Great Sparrow's right-hand man. He had even betrayed Cersei. Even Sir Kevin, who was as steady as an old dog, felt that Lannister's rule could no longer be stable. He stroked his thick chin, his neatly trimmed golden beard, and sighed. For a mere 1,000,000 gold royals, you released an uncontrollable beast. Look at you now, do you still think it was worth it? Thinking of her recent experience, Cersei's pale cheeks twisted. She growled, I am the Queen Dowager. The Archbishop should listen to me. The Targaryens have dragons, but they dare not say such a thing. Kevin's eyes showed a strange mixture of sarcasm and pity. The Great Sparrow accused you of regicide, god-slaying, incest, treason, infidelity, and false accusation. And just because the Targaryens were married, the church thought that they were violating human relations and wanted to rebel. Compared to you, Mergal the Cruel was a saint. What makes you think that the Archbishop will listen to you when he is armed? Ha, god-slaying. Cersei laughed. I would like to, but is it possible? That is the problem. Kevin's face was solemn. The Great Sparrow believes that the Archbishop is the spokesman of the 7 gods in the world. Murdering him is equivalent to god-slaying. Do you understand what this means? The Archbishop is equivalent to the 7 gods. Then how much is the king on the Iron Throne worth? Then send troops to exterminate the Great Sparrow. Kill the Great Sparrow's beggar army and let the Great Sparrow lick my feet. Cersei said bitterly. turn the Holy Land into a slaughterhouse. Kevin was stunned for a moment before he shook his head with a bitter smile. If Tywin was here, he might have done so long ago, but I'm sorry, but Lannister's elite soldiers followed Jaime to Hajin County, and I don't have that kind of courage. Actually, if Tyrion was here. Don't mention that bastard. He murdered my son and killed my father. It's all because of him that I'm in such a miserable state today. Cersei was so angry that veins popped out on her pale arm that was pressed against the back of the chair. Achoo, who's talking about me? In the Bay of Sorrows, Tyrion rubbed his nose and walked to the railing of the ship. He looked at the distant blue mountains and muttered, "Sigh, we've finally arrived at Slaver's Bay. I wonder if the Dragon Queen would be like my bitch sister, preferring a brainless deformed devil monkey. Achoo, did you catch a cold?" Kevin looked at his niece who was suddenly sneezing and asked with concern. "No. That name makes me sick." Cersei gasped. Sigh. Kevin placed his elbows on the table and massaged his temples. He sighed and said, "Fine, you don't like Tyrion, but Marjorie is Tommen's wife, your daughter-in-law. Which mother-in-law would send her lover to seduce her daughter-in-law and then announce to the whole nation that the daughter-in-law is a bitch? Have you ever thought about Tommen's feelings? Tommen the green fatty who fainted from crying in the toilet, sob. Someone finally thought about my feelings. Second grandpa is the best." Cersei clenched her fists tightly and said angrily, "Tommen is only 9 years old, and Marjorie is 16. As a woman, I know best that she won't be able to take it. She definitely won't be able to take it. Otherwise, why would she ask for moon tea from Pycelle?" Kevin said casually, "You also said that the age gap is too big. It's natural for her to be unable to take it. If Marjorie can drink moon tea, it means that she won't give birth to a bastard child for Tommen. Life doesn't go as planned. Just bear with it, and it will be over." Tommen's expression was wooden. "Second grandpa, is this something a human would say? Why can't you bear it?" How do you know that Marjorie won't give birth to a bastard child?" Cersei raised her chin slightly and felt an inexplicable sense of superiority. Looking at his niece's mocking and smug smile, Kevin realized that the person in front of him was an expert, a senior. Stealing a man, giving birth to a bastard child, murdering her own husband, and giving birth to a bastard child to usurp the throne. The combination of the Poison Queen moves was very smooth. Sir Kevin said earnestly, "But we can't do without the support of the High Court now, especially when Targaryen appears in the Westeros again. Dany Rise has a dragon. Let's not talk about the fact that Marjorie hasn't given birth to a bastard child. Even if she does give birth to 8 or 10 bastards, Tommen, you, me, and all the Lannister will happily acknowledge them. Anyway, Tommen's surname is Byra, Theon. Our Lannister is not that embarrassing." "Uncle, what are you talking about? In a game of power, you either lose or win. There is no middle ground, no compromise." Cersei said angrily. "Didn't you hear what I said?" Sir Kevin raised his voice and asked, "Dany Rise Targaryen is back. She has a dragon, understand? With the power of the Lannister family alone, Tommen won't be able to sit on the Iron Throne. Understand? Our real enemy is the Targaryens. Understand? Dany Rise." Cersei chewed on this name repeatedly as if she was chewing gum. She started to suspect the identity of the woman in the prophecy. "Is Dany Rise beautiful? Is she as beautiful as me?" she asked without rhyme or reason. Sir Kevin was confused. "What?" he asked in confusion. "Is Dany Rise as beautiful as me?" Cersei asked again. "Are you crazy?" Sir Kevin widened his eyes in horror. It was as if the woman in front of him had suddenly turned into a terrifying monster that he had never seen before. "Could it be that I guessed wrongly? The woman who is younger and more beautiful than me and who took away everything that I cherish is not Marjorie, but Dany Rise?" Cersei looked at her uncle in a daze. She muttered something that Kevin did not understand. Dany Rise will not conquer the King's Landing immediately. She has made a sacred oath to the vassals of the world, the one who ends the long night shall be king. So you don't have to worry about the mystic dragon burning the King's Landing. Targaryen is a threat, but only a threat in the future. Don't worry, don't be afraid, don't be crazy. Sir Kevin was a little scared and tried to comfort her. Cersei came back to her senses and understood her uncle's words. She sneered, "You believe a woman's words? I dare say that the little bitch is secretly building a huge navy. She will first use lies to make us lower our guard, then use Dragonstone Island as a bridgehead to bring the army across the narrow sea and directly take the King's Landing. With my intelligence, I would do the same, but you don't understand." Cersei shook her head gently and sighed. Sir Kevin glared at her and said, "The Dragon Queen's reputation is very good. Now everyone says that Targaryen's words are like a mountain. She has never broken an oath in the past few years, let alone a sacred oath. Targaryen's words are like a mountain. She really knows how to flatter herself. That woman said it herself, right?" Cersei smiled contemptuously. "You think I'm stupid? It's useless to say anything these days. It depends on what she does." Sir Kevin's eyes flashed with admiration. He sighed and said, "Don't doubt it. Lannister has people on the Great Wall. Her every move is written in reports and sent to Casterly Rock by messenger crows. I can swear that she is definitely a true Night Queen who cherishes her people, is righteous and trustworthy, and is brave and fearless." "Are you crazy?" Cersei exclaimed as if she had suddenly seen a big monster. "Know your enemy and acknowledge her nobility. Only then can you defeat her." Sir Kevin looked directly into Cersei's eyes and said word by word. "During the War of the Four Kings, your father personally admitted that compared to the young Wolf Master's bold and unrestrained style, his art of war and experience were somewhat out of place. Thus, he avoided direct confrontation and defeated the enemy in the field that he was best at, but the young Wolf Master was not. All right, tell me, what is the field that Dany Rise is not good at, but you are good at?" Cersei curled her lips and said. Sir Kevin's eyes flashed. He smiled faintly and said, "She is very brave and very responsible. Let the deviants take her away." "What are you talking about?" Cersei rolled her eyes and said disdainfully, "Only the most ignorant village woman would believe that verbal curses are useful. I also want to let the deviants take Marjorie away, but that bitch is sitting by the warm fireplace of the Red Keep, drinking and laughing happily." Sir Kevin pressed between his eyebrows. Talking to his stupid and crazy niece made him feel very tired. At the same time, he missed his smart and decisive elder brother more and more. How could such a great person die in a latrine pit? Damn Tyrion. Sighing in his heart, the old dog of the Lion family forced himself to be alert and said, "Marjorie is not in the Red Keep. Tommen and Pycelle are also not in the Red Keep." "Where did they go?" Cersei asked in surprise. "I sent a letter to Dragonstone Island, representing Lannister and the Iron Throne to acknowledge the agreement of, the one who ends the long night shall be king. I also hope to form a united front against ghosts with Dragonstone Island to ensure that the King's Landing will not be invaded by the mystic dragon. However, the Dragon Queen has not replied to my letter yet. The Red Keep is in danger of being burned by the dragon flame. We have to change places every day to avoid being attacked by the mystic dragon." At this point, Kevin's expression became strange. "In a way, you are safest in the great cathedral of Baelor. The Dragon Queen is a devout disciple of the seven gods. She will not burn down the great cathedral. Why don't you?" Before her uncle finished his rotten idea, Cersei waved her hand and interrupted him. She said in a firm tone, "I would rather sit on the Iron Throne and be burned to ashes by the dragon flame than rot in a cold and damp dungeon. Cersei, you can no longer sit on the Iron Throne. No matter what the outcome of the trial is, your reign is over. I will be the regent until Tommen comes of age." Sir Kevin crossed his fingers and leaned back on the wooden chair. He stared at the woman opposite him, carefully observing his niece's reaction. I am the Empress Dowager. You should serve me, just like how you served my father, not replace me. Cersei clenched her fists and glared at her uncle. You admitted to the Great Sparrow that you were unfaithful and had an affair. The church wants you to atone for your sins by parading through the city, naked. Kevin turned his head away, as if he could not bear to look at his niece's twisted and miserable face. No, never, Cersei pleaded weakly like a helpless child. Uncle, you have to reject the Great Sparrow's rude request. He is humiliating me, humiliating Lannister, humiliating the king, humiliating the Iron Throne, and humiliating this country. Cersei, you cannot represent this country, Sir Kevin sighed. Do you remember what Tywin arranged for you when he was alive? Arranged? Cersei was stunned for a moment before she shook her head frantically. No, I will not marry again. I am Tommen's mother, the Empress Dowager. I will not leave the Red Keep, I will not leave the King's Landing. The women in this world were sad. Even someone as strong and crazy as Cersei did not live a happy life. When she was young, she could not help but marry Robert, she did not like Robert. When she was a queen, she was abused by Robert every day. After she killed Robert, she was ready to be a carefree Empress Dowager, but Tywin immediately wanted to marry her. Chapter 402. Tywin had arranged many marriage partners for Cersei. The twins of Count Redwyn of Green Pavilion Island, Theon Greyjoy, Quentyn Martell, Villa Tyrell, Balon Greyjoy, most of them were young men. Cersei was in luck. Among them, Villa Tyrell was the best. He was the heir of the Duke of Highgarden and the elder brother of Little Rose. If the marriage was successful, Cersei would be her daughter-in-law's sister-in-law. Unfortunately, Old Rose of Highgarden thought that Cersei was a slut and not worthy of her grandson. Old Rose had her eyes on Sansa, so she rejected Tywin. If Theon had not become a eunuch, he would have been a good choice. Then there was King Balon. Balon and Theon were father and son, but they were both Cersei's matchmaking partners. For his daughter's marriage, Tywin was too generous. Actually, King Balon's wife was not dead. Even if Balon was dead, his wife was still alive. However, King Balon controlled the powerful Iron Fleet. The value of marriage was too high. Although Cersei did not lack young, strong, and handsome male companions, and was unwilling to give up the luxurious life of King's Landing, her resistance was powerless in front of Duke Tywin. If Tywin was not dead, Cersei would have been engaged to King Balon. Other than Villa Tyrell, Balon's marriage was the most valuable. Cersei, have you forgotten what your father told you? It is your responsibility to stabilize Tommen's rule through marriage. I will not mention the sacrifice for Lannister. You have always said that you love Tommen. Even if it is for him, you are not willing to compromise? Cersei's expression was uncertain. To be honest, your market is not good. You will be paraded in 5 days. The people of the 7 kingdoms will know that you betrayed your marriage. There are also hundreds of thousands of people who have seen your body. It's really not easy for someone to be willing to marry you. Kevin advised earnestly. Anger and fear flashed in Cersei's big blue eyes. She said weakly, Tommen won't let me leave him. Facing his niece's final struggle, Sir Kevin made up his mind and said directly, Tommen is still underage and can't participate in the meeting. I am the regent, and I have appointed Mace Tyrell as Hand of the King. Grand Maester Pycelle and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Sir Harys Swyver, will remain at the Imperial Council. Pycelle Redwyne will take over as Admiral, and Randall Tarley will be the judge. Do you understand? They are all my men. Either you fail to pass the trial of the Church, and if you are convicted of any crime of deicide or regicide, you will repent under the supervision of the Church for the rest of your life. Either you win the trial by martial arts and regain your freedom, then leave King's Landing and get married, or return to Casterly Rock to live alone. Sir Kevin gave his niece an ultimatum. Deicide and regicide. Cersei laughed sarcastically. Why is there no incest? If I am convicted of incest, you will no longer be the regent. If Cersei was convicted of incest, Tommen's crown would lose its legitimacy and legitimacy. Tommen's status as king would be illegal, and Regent Kevin would become a traitor. Do you want Tommen to die? Kevin said coldly. To tell you the truth, your madness won't do you any good. The one who accused you of incest is Stannis. The person the Great Sparrow hates the most right now is not you, nor Dany Alice, but the heretic who converted to the Red God. He has no intention of hearing his accusation. This was the real reason Cersei was set free. Lancel had told the Great Sparrow the color of Cersei's underwear, so the Great Sparrow was certain that Tommen was not Robert's son. But he could not judge the matter at all. If Tommen was a bastard, then Stannis would be the only rightful heir to the Iron Throne. At this time, Targaryen's jurisprudence was lower than that of Theon Byra. The three old nuns walked in front of Cersei and announced loudly, "This is Cersei of the Lannister family, the widowed Queen Dowager, the birth mother of King Tommen, the widow of King Robert. She has admitted to the great sin of deceit and lasciviousness. The sinner has confessed her crimes and prayed for absolution and forgiveness. The Archbishop has instructed her to cast aside all pride and deceit as a sign of repentance. She will show the way the gods created her in front of all the good men and women in the city. With a humble heart, the sinner sheds all secrets and privacy and embarks on a journey of atonement, naked before the gods and the people." At this moment, the majesty and holiness of the Iron Throne were completely trampled into the mud. The supreme kingship that Targaryen won after 100 years of bloody battle with the Church was in tatters. An invisible crown was crowned on the Great Sparrow's head, and he became a king without an Iron Throne. "Bitch," someone shouted. It was a woman. Women hit other women when they were in trouble, and men only wanted to stick their eyes to the suffering woman. Their mouths were only drooling and licking their tongues. How could they have time to talk? This was the Queen Dowager. Since the ancestors invaded the Westeros, about 12,000 years of the Kingdom era, this was the first time the Queen Dowager showed her beautiful body to the people. Not to mention the Westeros, it was also the first time the Queen Dowager was paraded naked in the streets. The Great Sparrow was definitely the most powerful archbishop in the Second Era. Benello, the supreme priest of Volantis, should be ashamed. The Great Sparrow did not have any magic power, and the god he believed in was fake. He was also very poor, and the Church's bank was sold. Even the Church's armed forces were not as strong as the Hand of Sacred Fire. When Cersei was imprisoned, the Church's armed forces were far weaker than the Hand of Sacred Fire. After Cersei was imprisoned, a large number of mercenaries and small nobles began to join the Church. At this time, the Church's armed forces were stronger than the Hand of Sacred Fire. Benello's mouth was invincible. Every day when he prayed, he would call on the slaves to revolt and rebel against the slave masters, but he had never harmed a single hair of the Blackwall nobles. The Great Sparrow was not a man of many words. One moment, he was obedient to the Queen Dowager, and the next moment, he got the permission to reorganize the Church's armed forces and immediately tricked the Queen Dowager into the great cathedral and imprisoned her. Up ahead, an old nun rang a bell as she sang loudly, "Shame, shame, come and see the sinner of shame, shame, shame." An old man's eyes widened as he muttered, "So big, so white, so, shame." The old woman grabbed her husband by the ear and twisted it, shouting at Cersei, "Whore, you are a disgraceful sinner. A disgrace, a disgrace." Cersei held her head high and glanced at the old woman in disdain. She purposely puffed out her chest and lifted her hips. "Ow wow," the old man howled. His eyes rolled back, and his limbs twitched as he fell to the ground. He had a stroke. "Ah, old man, what happened to you?" The old woman could not be bothered to scold the Queen Dowager anymore. She hugged her husband's body and cried, "Slut! The more the woman scolded, the more the man, after walking 2 streets, almost a kilometer, with thousands of people watching, only the woman cursed. It was a spectacle. Until a yellow, warm object flew out of the sky and landed on the Queen Dowager's smooth, white back. That rich smell and nauseating color instantly woke the men up from their pink dreams. The Queen Dowager, who had died, could no longer fantasize. Then, rotten eggs, rotten tomatoes, rotten vegetables, and even dead cats and dogs with bloated stomachs full of white maggots were thrown at Circe. The spring scenery was gone, and the men woke up and started cursing loudly. Bitch, sinner, adulterer, slut, traitor, and a lot of other words that referred to her body parts. The pride on Circe's face cracked like an eggshell and fell off little by little. She was as fragile and frightened as a hatchling, struggling to crawl out of the eggshell and show herself to the world. Circe fell in the smelly ditch. Her knees were bruised and the soles of her feet were cut. She staggered, as weak as her expression. The Queen Dowager's weakness became the mettle of the mob. They became more violent, scolded more loudly, and even began to show off their personal talents to the Queen Dowager. Look over here, everyone, a prostitute lifted her skirt and shouted at the men below from the window of the brothel. Less than half of those who have slept with the Queen Dowager have slept with the Queen Dowager. Do you want to suck it, Your Majesty? A man wearing a butcher's apron took out the Queen Dowager from his pants and grinned. Circe burst into tears. She could no longer maintain her composure. She covered her chest with one hand and her thigh with the other, just like how her father punished her little grandmother. Danny, who had planned to make fun of the Queen Dowager, also fell silent. Blackie hid in the dark sky and did not show up in front of the people of King's Landing. Killing people with just a nod was too much for a woman. Chapter 403. Old Town, City of Knowledge. The Dragon Queen did not cause much damage to the City of Knowledge. At this point in time, even the steward's pavilion, which had been hit by the dragon flame fireball, had been repaired. Doctor's meeting room. Vinegar, Balin sighed and placed the letter in his hand on the table. His right finger tapped on the paper lightly, producing a deep, du-du-du sound, like the rhythm of his frustrated heart. The room was silent. The clear morning sunlight passed through the colorful mosaic glass and shone on the faces of the doctors. Their expressions were as unpredictable as the light. Peristan sent another letter. Balin broke the silence and sighed softly. Balin was a doctor in astronomy. He was sharp-tongued and liked to give people nicknames. For example, Marvin's nickname of magician was given by him. Because of this, Balin received the nickname of Vinegar from the City of Knowledge. Perhaps it was because one's appearance reflected one's heart, but this bald old man had protruding bones and no flesh on his cheeks. He had a sharp face. However, such a person who was usually so strong and unkind also looked dejected at this moment. His face was filled with dejection. This is fake news. Next. Steward Theobald, who was sitting at the head of the table, slammed the table and said firmly. Balin was stunned and asked, "You've seen it?" "I just received the letter." "There's no need to see it. As long as I know that it came from the Great Wall, I'm sure it's fake." Professor Theobald waved his hand. Next. But Peristan, Balin had just opened his mouth when he was interrupted by the steward. "That's also a fake person, a fake Peristan. A fake person giving fake news." "Alright, that's reasonable." Balin rolled his eyes and continued, "Regardless of whether it's fake or not, I think you should know, the fake Peristan from the Great Wall sent a letter as a crow. He told us not to escape from reality and that Dani Rise and her dragon are the real saviors. The basis for the existence of the real world is that the world still exists. If the Westeros are gone, humans will be extinct. Even the most beautiful ideals will be meaningless. It really is a fake. The real Professor Peristan has a strong will and a firm belief. Why would he say something like that? Professor Ambrose said. Ambrose had a long and thin face. His hair and beard were all white, and his fluffy beard hung down to his chest. He was a doctor of medicine in the City of Knowledge, and also the doctor with the highest medical skills in Westeros. Balin shrugged his shoulders and said, the fake Paris-10 described in detail the weaknesses and attacking methods of the deviant ghosts and corpses. Normal armies are no match for them, and after a battle, the number of corpses increases. If the deviant ghosts crossed the Great Wall, their numbers would snowball and the entire human race would be wiped out. He said that he already knew about the City of Knowledge's defamation of Dragon Queen. He said that he was ashamed and even advised us to pack our bags and go to the Great Wall immediately and put on black clothes to atone for our sins. It's fake, the fake Paris-10 is despicable. All the professors said in unison. Varen tugged at his soft and comfortable squirrel fur coat and said with certainty, yes, it's fake. I'm afraid of the cold. Winter is coming, and going to the Great Wall will cost me my life. But that fake is also a big problem. The Great Wall sent out messenger crows to almost all the top nobles in the Seven Kingdoms. Not only did he encourage the nobles to aid the Great Wall, he even used the identity of Professor Paris-10 to distort the truth about the City of Knowledge. Because he called himself Paris-10 and even confessed his sins, many nobles believed him. Professor Nolan said. He was the previous head of the department, and was a doctor of economics and mathematics. Balin said bitterly, it's indeed a big problem. The messenger crows of the fake Paris-10 and the City of Knowledge arrived at the nobles' nests at the same time, causing the City of Knowledge's reputation to plummet. Many scholars who served the nobles wrote letters to question the City of Knowledge. Why are we so crazy as to openly violate the rights of the guests? Why would the nobles rather believe in fake news than the City of Knowledge? This is not normal, not logical, and not right. We are the City of Knowledge, the headquarters of the scholars. The scholars have the right to speak, and the scholars guide the public opinion of the Seven Kingdoms. Shouldn't the nobles believe whatever the scholars say? Head of Department Theobald said angrily. Professor Nolan smiled bitterly. The nobles aren't stupid. Why would the Dragon Queen violate the rights of the guests for no reason? What good would it do her to burn down the absolutely neutral City of Knowledge? If the Dragon Queen had never come to the Westeros and had never interacted with the nobles, maybe, but she went to participate in the tournament and even won the championship. Hundreds of nobles and thousands of knights have seen her, drank with her, and interacted with her. She even spoke with assurance at banquets, shining brilliantly. The nobles and knights of River Bend, Storm, Dorne, the Western region, and the King's Domain have a general understanding of her character. They all love and respect the first Night Queen of the Seven Kingdoms to wear the crown of love and beauty. They don't believe that she is the Mad King II. Everyone knows about the influence of the tournament in the Seven Kingdoms. Professor Galadue of History and Linguistics, who wrote Midsummer's Son, sighed and said, there are also singers and poets. They originally thought of Layla Weishue as a legendary hero. Now, they know that Layla Weishue has an even more legendary identity: the last princess, the queen who restored the country, Misha who freed the slaves, the mother of dragons, the mysterious night. When these legendary elements were added together, the singers and poets in the tavern went crazy with excitement. You should go to the Feather Wine Bottle and take a look. After half a month, there are at least 300 songs praising the mysterious Night King, and 46 versions of the story of Dragon Queen fighting for the Rose Crown. There are countless poems and stories that have been derived. Balin said helplessly, whether it is among the commoners or the nobles, not only is her reputation not bad, it is so good that it is exploding. Even if she fell from the sky while riding a dragon and died. 10,000 years later, as long as human history still exists, there will still be countless people praising her deeds and songs. Just like those legendary heroes from the Age of Heroes that have been passed down to this day. Then what should we do? The old man of Old Town clearly stated that the Hyder family will not be involved in this matter. Old Rose Gaoting is even worse. While secretly hinting to me to ruin the Dragon Queen's reputation, she also clearly stated that Gaoting does not know and will not interfere in the battle between the City of Knowledge and the Dragon Queen, Theobald said. If there is no other way, we will just admit it. Professor Nolan sighed. The Dragon Queen violated the rights of the guests and burned down the City of Knowledge. This sounds unreasonable to begin with. How is it unreasonable? She is the second Mad King. The Mad King's actions are the most unreasonable. The key is that no one believes it. Why don't we openly state the ideals of the real world? I believe that the nobles and commoners of the Seven Kingdoms will understand us. After all, we have no selfish motives, Professor Nolan said. You can't say it. Beilin hurriedly dissuaded him. The real world is the greatest selfish motive. Sigh, what is this? Sooner or later, the City of Knowledge will be destroyed because of the real world. So what if the Megalosaurus is extinct? Look at how active the Red Gods are now, and the Wizards of Asia have never gone extinct, Professor Zabaro lamented pessimistically. The real world is indeed a bit of a scam. Which bastard first came up with it? Professor Nemos cursed softly. Seeing that the group of professors were dejected, the general manager immediately changed the topic. Beilin, continue. What else is there? The Great Wall has elected its 998th Commander-in-Chief. Jon Snow, Stark's illegitimate son, Beilin said. Why him? What about Sir Mallister, Sir Elisa, Count Slint, and Commander Carter from the East Watch? Professor Ambrose asked curiously. Because of Jon Snow's outstanding contributions. He first went undercover among the barbarians and saved Dark Castle. Then, he followed the Dragon Queen to subdue the barbarians. After that, he joined the Suicide Squad to hunt for deviant ghosts. He even personally killed one, Beilin said. Fake news. There are no deviant ghosts. Next, the general manager said. Next. The corner of Beilin's mouth twitched. The fake Paristan has asked us to send out letters to spread the long night, the recruitment of night watchers, the Dragon Queen's vow, fake. There are no long night, no deviant ghosts, Theobald interrupted the professor of astronomy roughly. Next. Fake Paristan, is that bastard done yet? Why didn't the deviant ghosts take him away? The general manager said irritably. General manager, the deviant ghosts are fake. Don't lie, Beilin sneered. After being interrupted repeatedly, the professor of astronomy was also angry. Continue, the general manager said sullenly. To prove that the deviant ghosts are real, the fake Paristan will send a night watcher called Samwell to bring a deviant ghost and 2 ghouls to the City of Knowledge. Get rid of Samwell before he arrives at the City of Knowledge, the general manager said skillfully. The fake Paristan knows the City of Knowledge's methods. He specifically warned us not to harm Samwell because he also sent a letter to Count Tali at the same time, Beilin said awkwardly. Why does it involve Rando Tali again? The general manager asked curiously. Samwell's surname is Tali. He is the eldest son of Count Tali. Damn, I remember now. That fake Paristan is despicable. The general manager wanted to announce loudly, Samwell is a fake Tali. But he did not dare to let Rando Tali be cuckolded. Theobald thought for a while and said slowly, Samwell can reach the old town alive, but the fake deviant ghosts he brought must be eliminated in advance. A newly promoted middle-aged professor at the end of the table was puzzled. Why? If the deviant ghosts are real. Theobald raised his hand to interrupt him. With a complicated expression, he said, Professor Ernest, you are still young and have not experienced much. Once, when news of Liga's death in battle and the fall of the King's Landing reached the City of Knowledge, we felt as if the sky had collapsed and the world was about to be destroyed. Once, when news of Robert being murdered by Cersei and Lannister usurping Theon's Iron Throne reached us, we once again felt as if the world was about to be destroyed. But from beginning to end, the city of knowledge has been peaceful. Nothing has changed, and the sun has risen as usual. We have existed for thousands of years, and will continue to exist until eternity. In the meeting room, all the professors nodded silently. Professor Bailin, please continue, the general manager said. Many nobles have written to ask about the Dragon Queen's suggestion of, the one who ends the long night shall be king. How should we reply? It's fake. Next, the general manager said immediately. What's fake? Is the long night fake, or is what the Dragon Queen said fake? Professor Theobald said solemnly, it's all fake. If there is no long night, then there is naturally no long night to end it. That woman is too cunning. With the allied army nearby, she is unable to attack the Westeros. She is also worried that Lannister will stabilize his rule, so she lied to everyone in an attempt to disrupt the situation. She is also secretly gathering power on Dragonstone Island. Once winter is over, she will claim to be the child of prophecy, the savior of the world, and use force to force the nobles to acknowledge her as the king of the Seven Kingdoms. That's really possible. Baelin muttered. Let's not talk about the fake news related to the long night, deviant ghosts, and the Great Wall, Theobald said firmly. Next. Oh, next. Chapter 404. According to the news we received 4 days ago, Cersei should have been paraded through the streets to atone for her sins. What do you think about this? Don't you think that the Great Sparrow is too arrogant? Baelin said. Cersei deserves it. A doctor mocked. The Targaryen bloodshed of generations in exchange for the supreme kingship has been ruined by that stupid woman. From now on, there will be a political situation in the Seven Kingdoms where kingship and theocracy will oppose each other. I have never seen a woman stupider than Cersei. If Dany Alice was half as stupid and crazy as her, we wouldn't have such a headache. Speaking of which, it's strange. From Joffrey to Cersei, they are all Lannister. Why did they all awaken the bloodline of the Mad King? The doctors discussed animatedly, but they were not too worried. As long as there were nobles in Westeros, the city of learning would not collapse. Perhaps, in the future, every archbishop would be given a scholar, and the archbishop would be like the king, having a scholar to guide them in government affairs. Theobald said calmly, Cersei is already a thing of the past. The King's Landing is now under Kevin's control. Scholar Pycelle also sent news that Cersei might marry King Yuluin of Taimin Bay. Yuluin, king. The brother of Yuluin, King Balon, who ascended to the throne of Seastone through the King's Selection Convention. Theobald nodded and said hesitantly, Yuluin may not be too ambitious, but at least, you are easier to get along with than King Balon. Ever since he took the throne, he strictly restricted Tyamin's pirate activities. Not only did the pirates who had been harassing the coasts of the bay disappear, but Yuluin even agreed to return the Shield Islands that King Balon had occupied. Since when was Taimin so easy to talk to? The doctors were in an uproar. Could there be a conspiracy? Baelin said nervously. Greed and cunning are Tyamin's nature. How could he change so easily? Theobald laughed mockingly and slowly explained, the matter is complicated. First of all, Tyamin's forces were too few, and the battle line was too long. From Deep Forest Castle in the Northern Territory, to Carlin Bay, to the Shield Archipelago, to the estuary of the Mander River, to Old Town, to Qingting Island, the north-south battle line is more than 8,000 kilometers long. If Taimin doesn't make a choice, he'll be crazy. That's right. King Balon called himself King of the Iron Islands and the Northern Territory, and Yuluin inherited his position. If Yuluin is rational enough, you should focus on digesting the newly conquered territories in the northern region. Making enemies everywhere like King Balon is too crazy. The professors were deep in thought. Don't forget, Count Redwin's Qingting Island fleet is on the way home. If Taimin doesn't leave now, he won't be able to escape in the future. Of course, Gao Ting would have to pay a large sum of gold royals to redeem the Shield Islands. In the end, Yuluan was provoked by that woman. Theobald's expression was strange. Which woman? Danny Alice. The professor in charge laughed deeply and said, Yuluan was the first explorer to come back alive from the ruins of Valeglia. He obtained wealth comparable to that of a country, and even found a set of tile steel armor and a dragon egg. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a cold breath. Unfortunately, just as he left the stormy sea outside Valeglia, he met Danny Alice, who was sailing towards Slave Bay. She plundered him, and then she had the money to buy the Unsullied in Astapor. Dr. Bailin looked surprised and muttered, I didn't expect there to be such a grudge between them. Yuluan intends to form a tripartite alliance with Tyrell and Lannister. Currently, they have reached a few preliminary agreements. 1. Tyrell will pay the ransom, and Yuluan will return the Shield Islands and swear not to invade the territory of River Bend. 2. Cersei will marry Yuluan, and the Iron Fleet under Yuluan will swear allegiance to Tommen and reorganize into a new royal fleet to suppress the Targaryen forces on Dragonstone Island. 3. Tyrell and Lannister will create conditions for Yuluan to seize one or more Megalosaurus from Danny Alice. What? Sir Steward, are you crazy? Seizing a dragon from the mother of dragons? The professors looked at Theobald with the same gazes as they looked at Aerys, Joffrey, and Cersei. Yuluan did not reveal the specifics. However, he dared to swear to Anami that he once controlled her white dragon and green dragon. If he wasn't too greedy, he would have become the father of dragons by now, the steward said. Oh, since he swore to Anami, then it must be true. The professors nodded in surprise. Then, they became excited again and said happily, the tripartite alliance seems to be very promising. Dragon Queen, I am the holy light, I am. Everyone in the room was celebrating when suddenly, a deep, majestic, and grand voice came from outside the window. The steward was furious and stood up, shouting at the window, which bastard is making a racket outside, disturbing Kakik. Mystic! Mystic! Mystic dragon! The professor's pupils contracted, their teeth chattered, and their faces turned as pale as a corpse. The nightmares of the past came back to them. Whoosh! A huge shadow swept across the flower bed in front of the steward's pavilion. The professors and apprentices who were sitting on the lawn and reading were shocked. They looked up at the sky and were stunned. I am the eldest son of the mother of dragons, I am the mighty dragon of heaven, the vanguard of justice. Another long list of titles came out from Blackie's mouth. At this time, Danny was using the Buddha's Mercy mode. It was like the morning bell and evening drum, shocking the people of the old town and the scholars from the city of knowledge. The mystic dragon is speaking. 7 gods above, am I hallucinating? The professors, scholars, apprentices, and even the people on the street were stunned. It was as if they were dreaming. Today, at this time, at this place, I am the dragon of judgment. In the name of the Father, I judge the 7 sins of the city of knowledge. In the teachings of the 7 gods, the Father represented judgment and justice. The first sin, arrogance. Disregarding the reality of the world and using one's will as an illusion, attempting to build a false real world. Blackie's voice rumbled as it explained the real world again. Ah, what is the city of knowledge trying to do? Most of the people of the old town were confused. The few who understood were shocked. The second sin, jealousy. Magic power is innate. Only a few people have the qualifications to master supernatural powers. The scholars of the City of Knowledge were unable to cultivate magic, or their talent in magic was shallow. Chapter 405. Fake Holy Dragon, Fake Envoy of Justice, Fake Great Guardian of the Church of the 7 Gods. That's the mystic dragon, he can't represent the 7 gods. The mother of dragons wants to destroy the City of Knowledge. Theobald roared ferociously. She's not the ruler of the 7 kingdoms, she has no right to judge us. She swore on the Great Wall that she wouldn't take the initiative to attack the forces supporting the Great Wall in the north. We were wrong. Regardless of whether the deviant ghosts are real or fake, we should join the Ghost Resistance United Front. The Mother of Dragons didn't even kill Stannis, she definitely wouldn't attack the City of Knowledge. Sigh, we shouldn't have provoked her, shouldn't have spread rumors saying that she violated the rights of a guest, shouldn't have, no, we can't be that cowardly. Do you think we'll disband the City of Knowledge just because the Mystic Dragon says so? We have the support of the nobles of the 7 kingdoms. The old town of Hiding Tyrell, the King's Landing and the Iron Throne will all stand on the City of Knowledge's side. Yes, let the Ghost Resistance United Front go to hell with the deviant ghosts. We will join you King Lewin's tripartite alliance and fight the Mystic Dragon to the end. In the meeting room of the Steward's Pavilion, the professors all looked terrified as they expressed their opinions. The Holy Light Black spoke again. I am the Judgment Dragon. I will now announce the trial of the professors and scholars of the City of Knowledge. Grand Scholar Pycelle, Steward Theobald, Economics Professor Nolan, Vinegar, Balin. My name is on it. How does the Mystic Dragon know me? Balin's shriveled face was filled with disbelief and fear. Suddenly, as if he remembered something, he shouted, Paris Tan, fuck his mother. Not only did that fellow betray his ideals, he also betrayed us. Other than Pycelle, the names mentioned by the Mystic Dragon are all murderers. Shut up, it's fake, it's all fake. Theobald was furious and interrupted him, Paristan is fake, the Holy Dragon is fake, that is the Mystic Dragon. The Mystic Dragon's words are also fake. Dragons can't speak, everyone knows that. The Mother of Dragons is a witch, she is secretly casting witchcraft to make us hallucinate. Sir Supervisor, look at the scholars and acolytes outside the window. They all heard it. Balin's face was contorted as he pointed at the window and said with a trembling voice, the glass is shaking. Gah! Dr. Theobald suddenly froze. His angry expression was like sour milk, frozen on his face. The hall was silent. Only the Megalosaurus announced the final verdict. The named doctors and their assistants have only 2 choices. 1. Kill themselves and wash away their sins with blood. 2. Put on black clothes and become night watchers. Their sins will be erased. It's so cold in the north. I don't want to guard the Great Wall. Balin cried. The Mystic Dragon doesn't have the final say. Grand Secretary Pycelle definitely won't go to the Great Wall. The Iron Throne won't allow the Mother of Dragons to do whatever she wants. Professor Nolan's old face was as pale as a dead man's. He trembled as he comforted himself. She is not the Queen of the 7 Kingdoms. She has no right to judge the Academy City. Let's ignore her and continue the meeting. Theobald sat down stiffly and forced himself to speak calmly. Roar! The Holy Light Megalosaurus seemed to have heard his shameless declaration. It roared with a thunderous voice, I am the great guardian of light of the 7 gods, appointed by the Dragon Queen and the Chief Bishop. My judgment is the decree of the 7 gods. Any believer of the 7 gods in the 7 kingdoms can monitor the actions of the sinners. The Megalosaurus was extinct, Targaryen lost their divinity, and the 7 dukes began to have the ambition to participate in the game of power. The Iron Throne's value had shrunk by 80%, only 2,000 gold royals remained. The Black Fire rebelled, and Targaryen fell completely to the mortal world. This made all the Westeros understand one thing, Targaryen was human, no different from them. The Iron Throne was once again devalued by half, only 1,000 gold royals remained. When the Targaryen dynasty ended and Theon Baela became the new royal family, all the nobles of the 7 kingdoms suddenly understood one thing, they could also sit on the Iron Throne. The Iron Throne's value had shrunk again, 500 gold royals. After all, Robert had won the Iron Throne by force, and at least he could convince people with force. But Lannister had used the exchange of interests and the game of power to turn a false king into a true king. Who in the world would be convinced? Or rather, we don't have dragons, we don't have Robert's peerless strength, but who doesn't know how to play the game of power? Thus, the rebellion of the 4 kings began, and 5 independent kings appeared in the 7 kingdoms. The Iron Throne was devalued by 80%, only 100 gold royals remained. When Tywin died, Queen Marjorie was arrested, and Cersei was paraded through the streets. The Iron Throne was devalued by 90% again. Calculating, how much was the Iron Throne worth now? 10 gold royals. From 10,000 gold royals to 10 gold royals, what was worse was that the Iron Throne's true value was shrinking, but the price to pay to obtain it was increasing crazily. When Aegon conquered the 7 kingdoms, there was no Dragonslayer crossbow, so he could set fire to Heron Castle and Raging Fury. If you tried to set fire to Red Castle now, you could guarantee that the Megalosaurus would be shot into a hornet's nest before you could even spit out a mouthful of dragon flames. Back then, people were simple and honest. When Aegon conquered the 7 kingdoms, even the most cunning Lannister surrendered sincerely. He was very chivalrous. Now, if others dared to surrender, would you dare to accept? For example, if Waldfrey, Cersei, Old Rose, Littlefinger, and Sibyl, Robb's mother-in-law, surrendered and swore loyalty to you, would you dare to accept them and give them your full trust? Aegon and his siblings had returned to the present, and if they still did things the same way, they would probably be eliminated in the first round. It was just that people's morals were not what they used to be. The way of the world was too difficult. If the Iron Throne was treated as a stock, its profits would be reduced by 1,000 times, but the risk would be increased dozens of times. Would you still buy it? Hurry up and throw it away. After seeing Cersei's miserable state, Dany finally made up her mind to give up the Iron Throne. If she took away Cersei's Iron Throne and became the next queen, how would the people who saw the Queen Regent, Mimi, and her crotch today imagine the queen on the Iron Throne? Would the people of King's Landing and the nobles of the 7 kingdoms look at Dany with respect and admiration, or lewdness, or even secretly compare her with her predecessor? Comparing size, Perky, Anne. The Great Sparrow was too ruthless. He stuffed the identities of Queen and King into the latrine and poured 100 buckets of dung over them. They were smelly and rotten. In today's Westeros, the Queen and Queen had become the professor and godfather of today's society. They had been played rotten. Of course, Dany was not Cersei. She had the ability to make the stock Iron Throne rise again and restore the sanctity of the royal authority. In the future, if any of her grandchildren made Grandma Dany unhappy, they would be punished to be a duke or king in the Westeros. Chapter 406. Bronn also saw Cersei's body, but he did not look for long as he did not have time. The Earl of Blackwater disguised himself and snuck into King's Landing to invite Master Blacksmith Tobu Mott on behalf of the Dragon Queen. When all the people of King's Landing went to watch Cersei and Mimi, Bronn quietly sent more than 20 blacksmiths into the cargo ship. Other than Master Tobu, who could reforge Valeglia's steel, all the more famous blacksmiths in Steel Street were kidnapped. That's right, kidnap. It was impossible not to kidnap. First of all, most of the world's famous blacksmiths had studied abroad, in Kohler, and some were even originally from Kohler. Kohler had joined the United Nations that blockaded Slaver's Bay, and the Black Goat High Priest had long ago issued a decree: Kohler's blacksmiths were not allowed to serve the Dragon Queen. Secondly, the blacksmiths in this world had a higher social status and were all rich. For example, the blacksmiths kidnapped by Bronn all had properties in Steel Street. They had houses, shops, servants, apprentices, and the dignity of a boss. If Bronn had directly stated his intentions, almost no one would be willing to abandon their current properties and be trapped in Dragonstone Island to forge dragon crystal weapons for the Dragon Queen. At least Tobu Mott was not willing. If he dared to reveal the spells and techniques to the Dragon Queen, if the Kohlers knew about it, they would not let him go. So Bronn could only kidnap. Before Cersei's parade ended, Bronn had already completed his kidnapping mission. The cargo ship carrying the blacksmiths quietly left King's Landing. But not long after entering Blackwater Bay, Blackie came again and gave the task of meeting with Big Sparrow to Bronn. Bronn lowered a small boat from the cargo ship and led 8 of his men to return to King's Landing. The meeting location was decided by Big Sparrow. Bronn and his men were only responsible for Blackie's safety, ensuring that there were no dragonslayers within half a kilometer of the meeting location. If the Great Sparrow didn't care about publicizing the relationship between the church and the Dragon Queen, Blackie could directly land in the backyard of the Great Cathedral of Baelor. If the Great Sparrow wanted to keep it a secret, he could go to the Blackwater River or Blackwater Bay. Blackie dived into the water and only showed his head to talk to him. However, the Big Sparrow was not worried about angering the Iron Throne at all. He directly asked Big Black to go to the observatory of the Baelor Great Sage Hall. The 8 underlings stood separately on the top floors of several buildings near the observatory, making sure that the church did not play any tricks. They were like the bodyguards in black who scattered around to check the sniping points when the big shots were negotiating in the movies. The crossbow was large and required a wide range of shooting angles. It was almost impossible to hide it. After that, Bronn covered the floor of the observatory with a 7-pointed star flag of the church. Dahe, who had been hiding in the clouds, saw the signal and flew down. "May the holy light protect you, Your Excellency." The huge demonic shadow whizzing down made the Big Sparrow's pupils shrink, and she was shocked speechless. The Megalosaurus landed lightly behind the platform, folded its wings, left wing at the side of its body, and right wing across its chest. It lowered its head, bowed, spoke, gave its blessings. It could speak with perfect articulation, it could bow gracefully, and it had an open, holy and inviolable temperament. The dark body of the Megalosaurus seemed to be glowing. No, there was a golden sun rising behind him. The Big Sparrow seemed to see the 7 gods descending to the world, and her whole person fell into a trance. "Your Excellency." The one-armed hero Lancel on the side quietly reminded the Archbishop. "Oh." The Big Sparrow rubbed her eyes and looked back. Damn, it was an illusion. Just after noon, the black dragon flew down from the angle of the light, as if the sun had been behind him. "Megalosaurus, can you speak?" The Big Sparrow knew that the 7 gods had not descended, but she still asked a stupid question. Dany and Blackie's sea of consciousness held back her laughter, and announced solemnly through Blackie's mouth, "Your Excellency, I am the eldest son of the Dragon Mother, my name is Big Black. But I'm also a devout believer of the 7 gods. I believe in the Holy Light, I believe in justice, Holy Father, I believe in mercy, Holy Mother, I believe in freedom, I believe in courage, warrior, I believe in power, blacksmith, I believe in wisdom, old woman, I fear death and the unknown, stranger. Therefore, I am the Holy Light, the vanguard of justice, the Holy Megalosaurus, the Dragon of Justice." Oh, oh, oh. The Big Sparrow began to feel dizzy again. Lancel, Bronn, and the others on the side seemed to have fallen into a dream, let alone her. After a while, the Big Sparrow understood some of the meaning in Blackie's words and asked, "What is the Holy Light?" "Your Excellency, look." Blackie pointed at the sun in the blue sky with his wings. "What do you see?" The Big Sparrow looked up at the sky in a daze, and just for a moment, she was sad and shed tears. The sun was so bright. He covered his eyes and said in a muffled voice, "The sun, there is a sun in the sky." "No, that is not the sun." Blackie's ferocious dragon face became particularly serious and solemn. "That is purity, warmth, holiness, that is the maiden, one of the 7 gods." The foreign archbishop was a little unaccustomed to the Zenji of the Chinese style. He was confused for a while before he understood the meaning of Blackie's words. 7 gods above, this Megalosaurus seems to be more like an archbishop than me. I'm enlightened, enlightened. The big sparrow was amazed and said, "It is good to compare the maiden to the holy light. But will it make the believers misunderstand? After all, the Light King Lalo is known to the world." "Your Excellency, you know about the deviant ghosts, right?" the holy light black dragon asked. "Yes. Do you think the long night will not come?" "I." The big sparrow looked hesitant and sighed. "After receiving the news, I prayed in front of the old woman for 3 days and 3 nights. I didn't eat or drink, hoping that the old woman would carry a golden lamp to illuminate my future." Danny was speechless about the way the 7 gods prayed. After being hungry for 3 days and 3 nights, even a normal person would have auditory hallucinations. Then, they would think that they were communicating with the 7 gods. Getting enlightenment from the 7 gods. "The deviant ghosts are real," the holy Megalosaurus said with certainty. "The Light King Lalo has been planning this since 5,000 years ago. This long night is a big crisis for the Church of the 7 gods. When the long night comes and the sun disappears, the believers will look forward to the sun, to the light and warmth, and the red god will satisfy all the prayers of the believers." Ah! The big sparrow's face changed dramatically. He really didn't think of this. If the long night was real, and the Church of the 7 gods had neither prophesied nor arranged a savior, and they were so slow to react and do nothing, then, Archbishop, you come from Hejian. Don't you know how fast the red god's faith is developing there? Every time there is one more person who believes in the red god, there will be one less devout believer of the 7 gods. This is a loss of faith. I know. I heard that Mersoros can resurrect the dead. The big sparrow's face looked terrible. The resurrection of the dead is the biggest miracle in the world. No wonder the believers will change their faith. Hejian is just the beginning, the holy Megalosaurus warned him loudly. Stannis is the child of holy fire chosen by the 7 gods, the holy son of Lalo. The red-robed woman Melisandre is a demigod, Lalo's servant. With such a big price, can't you see Lalo's ambition? He judged the 7 gods as heretics, evil gods, and he wants to be the only god in the world. Damned Stannis, why didn't you kill that evil heathen with a mouthful of dragon flame? The big sparrow said with a frown. Because of the holy oath. I am the dragon of justice. My words and actions represent the mother of dragons and the 7 gods. I can't do anything that goes against my oath, the holy Megalosaurus said solemnly. It's fine if you represent the mother of dragons, but you say you represent the 7 gods. Did you ask for my permission? The big sparrow was slightly unhappy. Can the girl become the holy light change all this? He asked. My mother, the Archbishop of the 7 gods of Slaver Bay, decided to slightly change the position of the girl in the doctrine of the 7 gods. I know that. She once told me that the girl not only symbolizes purity, but also represents freedom, the girl who holds the torch of freedom. The big sparrow nodded. This is in line with the doctrine of the 7 gods against slavery in the 7 gods Bible. It's also good for the Church of the 7 gods to develop believers in the free city. I personally agree with this. Now, the great dragon queen has also decided to change the meaning of purity. Purity is not only the purity of the body, but more importantly, the purity of the spirit and the soul. Just like light, warm and pure, it's called holy light. The holy light is the light of hope in the long night. The holy light can dispel the cold. Believers can get strength and salvation in the holy light. The red god has a prayer of, the long night is full of danger. The girls of the 7 gods should also have a prayer of, may the holy light protect you. The Megalosaurus of the holy light spoke with assurance, and the look on the big sparrow's face became more and more shocked. What a good girl is the holy light. The doctrine of the Westeros also needs to be changed. Starting tomorrow, I will update the girls of the 7 kingdoms to the girls of Slaver Bay. The big sparrow made a decision. After saying that, he even solemnly bowed to Dahe as a fellow member of the church and said, may the holy light protect you. May the holy light deceive you. Big Black replied and continued, in order to cope with the coming long night, the Church of the Seven Gods has to be reformed. How to change? The Big Sparrow listened attentively. He felt that he had found another fellow Taoist. Like Layla Vesuvius, the Megalosaurus way of thinking about the doctrine of the Church of the Seven Gods resonated with him. A like-minded member of the Church. There were only him, the Dragon Queen, and the Megalosaurus in the world. So lonely. The Church must launch a department dedicated to dealing with the crisis of the long night, the Church of the Light of the Seven Gods. Split the Church? The Big Sparrow frowned. No, the Church of the Seven Gods only emphasizes that there are seven gods in the Church. Of course, we all know that the seven gods are one. Look at the King of Light Lalo. The word light refers to the red god's clergy. Looking at the Big Sparrow's thoughtful face, the holy Megalosaurus said patiently, try adding the word light in front of the seven gods. The Church of the Seven Gods of Light. The Big Sparrow murmured. Remove the word seven. The seven gods are one with seven faces. They are the seven forms of one god. There is no need to forcibly split into seven gods. Danny was not talking nonsense. Ordinary people thought that the seven gods represented the seven gods. In fact, in the doctrine of the Church of the Seven Gods, gods had no gender. The seven gods were the only god. A person had seven forms and seven morals. The Church of the Light. The Big Sparrow murmured. It seemed to be much more superior than the Church of the Seven Gods. It also sounded very strong, domineering, and arrogant, like a big boss. Chapter 407. Won't this cause conflict between the Seven Gods Church and the Light King? Both sides seem to be fighting for the divine position of light. Braun frowned and said uncertainly, is it a divine position? I don't know anything about gods. Is the red god the only god of light? The one-armed hero Lancel retorted. Big Sparrow's expression kept changing. He wanted to say proudly, fuck you, Light King, the Seven Gods Church doesn't care about you. But deep down, he knew that the Seven Gods Church was different from the Red God Church. In the Seven Gods Church, if you didn't live alone in the cathedral and fast for more than 3 days, you wouldn't be able to sense the seven gods. But Soros, a Red God follower, ate and drank every day, got drunk, and liked to participate in group fights. Such a person in the Seven Gods Church would never be able to communicate with the Seven Gods Church. But Monk Wine and Meat, who drank, ate, and killed people, was favored by Lalo and revived the dead many times. The seven gods, reviving the dead. God knows how much Big Sparrow envied such a divine skill. Even though he communicated with the seven gods many times, he never got a divine skill. The seven gods were real. Every time he fasted and prayed, he would be enlightened. He never doubted this. But the seven gods seemed to be too far away from the real world and couldn't transmit power to their followers. This was a big problem. Thinking of this, Big Sparrow sighed deeply and said, the Church of Light is good, but this is too important. I must pray to the seven gods. Wait 3 days. No, this time I will pray in seclusion for 7 days and 7 nights. 7 days and 7 nights. Will I see you again next time? Queen Circe still needs you, Queen Marjorie still needs you, the king on the Iron Throne, now and in the future, they all need you. Don't rush to see Saint Bailey. Danny was very worried. Your Excellency, you must take care of yourself. Holy Megalosaurus said sincerely, the burden of protecting the church and stopping the Light King from dyeing the Westeros red is all on you. You are the son of the Seven Gods Church, the child of prophecy, the savior. How did I become the child of prophecy? The Big Sparrow looked blankly at the sincere black dragon and asked, I wasn't born in the land of smoke and salt, I also, Your Excellency, you are talking about the prophecy of the ES God. You are the child of the 7 gods, the child of the prophecy of the Church of the 7 gods, not the child of the prophecy of the Red God, the divine Megalosaurus Blackie said seriously. Prophecy of the 7 gods. The big sparrow opened his mouth wide and asked in a daze. Of course, if the red deity can make a prophecy, why can't the 7 deities? The 7 gods of light enlightened me. I saw the future in time, the future of the prophesied child of the 7 gods. The divine Megalosaurus announced loudly, after the long summer, the stars will weep blood, and the cold darkness will envelop the world. The sacred Son of Light was born in Hejian, and he walked barefoot across the 7 kingdoms. He wields the sacred sword of light, which was forged from devout faith, fearless courage, and steel-like willpower. He will dispel the darkness and end the long night. Your Excellency, you see, the sacred Son of Light in the prophecy is you. The divine Megalosaurus roared excitedly. The big sparrow said with a straight face, I was not born in Hejian. My hometown is west of Nukwon, a village near the Trident River. Damn it, the information is wrong. Danny cursed in her heart, but she immediately thought of a remedy. Your Excellency, you are too narrow-minded. The divine Megalosaurus seemed to be complaining. Lalo also said, land of smoke and salt, but he did not directly specify where it was. His Majesty of the 7 gods is the same. The so-called Hejian does not refer to the Hejian kingdom of the 7 kingdoms. Hejian, by the river. You see, weren't you born by the Trident River? At this time, even foreigners who had not experienced the Book of Elixir and the Yellow River Cyclops slowly understood the trick of the divine Megalosaurus. The big sparrow was convinced that if he said that although his hometown was by the river, his birthplace was in the Dorne Desert, the wise, divine Megalosaurus could also round it up. It was not because the big sparrow was stupid that he did not realize it before. In fact, there had been many prophecies in this world. Some hid the prophecies, some misinterpreted the prophecies, some wanted to break the prophecies, but no one had ever faked a prophecy. Not to mention the prophecy of a savior. It was crazy. A light flashed in the big sparrow's eyes, and he asked, why is it not your mother, Danny Lizzie? Is she going to be Yesor Yahai? They were all archbishops, and they were all children of prophecy. It seemed to be very promising. No, Lalo's divine servant confirmed that the savior in Yasser's prophecy must be a believer of the Red God, the child of holy fire. Mother swore that she would rather die than change her faith to the King of Light. The Holy Dragon of Light said sonorously. Hey, Layla. Danny Lizzie, a member of the church, indeed has the style of Saint Baylor. No, she is the reincarnation of Saint Baylor. The big sparrow's dark and thin cheeks turned red, and he was so excited that he was a little incoherent. The one-armed hero Lancel and a few armored children of war also looked reverent and nodded in admiration. Braun turned his head away to avoid letting everyone see his twisted cheeks. Mother said that maintaining the Church of the 7 Gods in Slave Bay has already exhausted her both mentally and physically. She has no qualifications, no ability, no energy, and no time to contribute more strength to the Westeros. She is deeply ashamed and sad about this. Oh, Archbishop, Mother also knows that the child of prophecy is a heavy burden. But other than you, no one can do it. You have to work hard, for the 7 gods, for the church, for the people of the 7 kingdoms. The big sparrow nodded in satisfaction. This was an honest Megalosaurus with wisdom, the simple truth contained rich wisdom. Dragon Queen, don't be sad, she is struggling to maintain the 7 gods church under the Red God's halo, it is already very difficult. He comforted gently. Then you agree? Agree to fulfill the heavy responsibility of the Holy Son of Light? Holy Dragon asked. For the 7 gods, for the church, for the people of the 7 kingdoms, I am willing to do my best until my death. The big sparrow sighed. However, the Holy Son of Light needs a sharp sword, not only faith, courage, and willpower. Then, he changed the topic and asked meaningfully, what does Dragon Queen think about the church's armed forces? Good. The holy Megalosaurus said loudly. Good. The big sparrow was stunned. Your ancestor tried every means to abolish the church's armed forces, and you say it's good? Very good, the church can't be without its own armed forces. The holy Megalosaurus said firmly, faith and willpower are useful, but the night is long, and the world is dangerous. Without a steel sword, how can we protect the church? Mother said that Archbishop only develops the church's armed forces in King's Landing, it is still too conservative. You should let the power of the constellation warriors and the children of war blossom everywhere in the 7 kingdoms. All the idle men at home should join the gathering of the poor, and all the noble children, except for the eldest son, should join the children of war. The holy dragon of light raised its wings high and said fanatically, you should build the church of light's heaven on earth in the King's Landing, in the 7 kingdoms. Thump thump thump. The big sparrow was forced to take 3 steps back by the fanaticism of the holy dragon. This dragon is a fanatic of the 7 gods. The big sparrow was shocked. Then, what does Dragon Queen think about the church's trial of the royal family? He swallowed and asked again. I strongly support. All the sinners in the 7 kingdoms, no matter their identity, should be judged. The holy Megalosaurus said without hesitation. The church is short of money. Other than the donations from the banks and the nobles, there is no regular income. I plan to take a part of the business tax and land tax to fund the operation of the church. The big sparrow probed. No problem, I support it. My mother will definitely support it too. The holy Megalosaurus immediately said. The 7 gods, they even gave up their financial and political power. This is a true believer of the 7 gods. After Sir Kevin became the regent, he gave the church a position as the Minister of State and invited me to participate in the Imperial Conference. Brother Big Black, what do you think? The big sparrow was excited and his tone became much more intimate. He even began to talk to the black dragon as a peer. No. The Megalosaurus objected loudly. No. The big sparrow was shocked. You can't go to the Red Castle. Lannister can't be trusted. If you go, you might be killed. Also, why does the church only have 1 seat? There are at least 4 seats. 1 for the monk, 1 for the nun, 1 for the star warriors, and 1 for the child of war. Sigh. The big sparrow stomped his feet and sighed. Why did the Dragon Queen make a sacred oath to end the long night as the king? She should immediately ascend to the Iron Throne and work with me to build the Westeros into a kingdom of God on earth. It's okay. Even if she's far away in Slaver's Bay, Mother will make a public statement to support the church's actions in King's Landing. Don't worry and do it boldly. Do it with all your might. I'm even willing to accept your baptism and officially join the Church of the 7 Gods. The holy Megalosaurus said. What, baptism? The big sparrow was shocked. Yes, although I'm devoted to the 7 gods, Mother didn't baptize me because I was young. Why don't you baptize me and let me become a Megalosaurus monk? Megalosaurus. Monk? The 7 gods. The big sparrow, Lancel, Bronn, and the children of war's eyes bulged. Their jaws almost fell off. Why, no. I've been a believer of the 7 gods since I was born. I can even recite the 7 Stars Bible. But. The big sparrow was in a trance. He felt that it wasn't normal for a Megalosaurus to become a monk, but the holy dragon was right. He was intelligent, could speak, and was a believer of the 7 gods since he was young. He could even recite the 7 Stars Bible. If you let me baptize you, the church register will naturally fall to the great cathedral of Baylor. Are you going to stay in the King's Landing Church forever? He was hopeful and worried. Only his white robe swayed gently, making him look like a giant statue. Sir Robert. Cersei raised her voice. Your Majesty, Sir Robert swore the sacred oath of silence. He will not speak until he has killed all your enemies. If you wish to kill someone, just give the command. Your order is his mission. Caborn's lips curled into a smile as he explained gently. Good, very good. Cersei nodded excitedly. Now, take off your helmet and let me see your face. A hint of hesitation flashed across Caborn's face, but before he could stop him, Robert Strong had already taken off his giant helmet. Ah, it's you. Why is it you? Go away, go away, go away. Cersei's rosy cheeks, which had just drunk the cider, turned pale. Her beautiful blue eyes flashed with extreme fear. She waved her arms and screamed. Your Majesty, do not be afraid. He will not hurt you again. Cabourn quickly comforted. Clang, clang, clang. Robert Strong was like an emotionless robot. He put on his helmet and walked out the door. After Robert Strong left, Cersei regained her composure. She questioned the biohazard mage loudly, why is it him? Cabourn, what have you done? Your Majesty, I have already reported to you. Cabourn said innocently. 7 hells. Cersei's face contorted as she reprimanded, you said you were conducting immoral medical experiments. Is that something medicine can do? I am a doctor from the barbarians and Asha, Cabourn argued. Then he added, also, he is the most loyal knight. Just like me, he will never betray you. Even if you ask him to bathe the great cathedral in blood, he will not hesitate or show mercy. All right, all right. Cersei's face gradually regained color. She was convinced. Ask him to kill the 5 lowly commoners who were rude to me. Which 5? During the parade, many people were rude to you, Your Majesty. Cabourn was confused. Then kill as many as you can. The more you kill, the happier I will be, Cersei said impatiently. My experiment is at a critical stage. I need some living materials. Cabourn rubbed his hands and smiled kindly. Sure. Their cries will give me a good dream. There is a dungeon under the Red Keep. The cries of the prisoners can be heard by the people living on the first floor. Of course, I want to hear the confessions of the 3 old nuns, Unia, Skoya, and Mal, Cersei said. We cannot touch the people of the church for now, Your Majesty, Cabourn advised. I know. If you want revenge, you have to wait until after the trial. Wait until I regain control of King's Landing. Wait until I call back the elites of the Lannister from Riverside. Humph. Your Majesty is wise, Cabourn complimented. Right, that Dany rise. Cersei thought of the Toad Witch's prophecy. Her face darkened and her eyes flickered. Is she as beautiful as me? This. Cabourn did not understand and chose his words carefully. I heard that the people of House Targaryen are all good-looking. Damn it, it's her. She said, how about we send the 3 brothers to the Great Wall and have them secretly let the other ghosts in? The 3 brothers of Kate and Blake, the eldest, Osmond, the second, Osfrey, and the third, Ernies, were the 3 scavenger crows in Cersei's Feast of the Crows. The 3 unknown hooligans used their weapons and skills to rise to the top. The eldest brother became the King's Guard, the second brother became the commander-in-chief of the city's garrison, and the third brother became the Empress Dowager's close vassal. Cersei's original plan was to let the third brother seduce her daughter-in-law, Marjorie, and then let the third brother confess his affair with the Queen to the Great Sparrow. When the third brother was arrested, she would personally appear and send him to the Great Wall. When he reached the Great Wall, the third brother had a mission, to trick Jon to death and make the Stark extinct. Unfortunately, the great sparrow saw through Circe's plan. He did not hesitate to torture the third brother who came to report Marjorie. The third brother could not take the beating and instead revealed all of Circe's secrets. Then, Circe was sent to prison. She did not learn from her mistakes and came up with an even more cunning plan. "No, your majesty, you cannot let the deviant ghosts in." Caborn's expression changed as he hurriedly advised. "You saw it yourself. When facing deviant ghosts, Dragon Queen abhors evil. If she knew that you let deviant ghosts into the northern territory, she would immediately send wings of death to send a meteor down on you." "Who would know that I did it?" Circe said. Caborn did not know what to say. His boss's intelligence was so low that he wanted to change bosses. He heard that the Dragon Queen knew witchcraft and was a witch. He did not know if she would want someone like him. "Kate and Blake will definitely betray you." He sighed. "They dare." Circe shouted. "Sigh, how did you end up in the dungeon of the great sanctuary?" Caborn reminded her. A few days later, River Delta City. At noon, in the dining hall, many of the Fry family's descendants were gathered together, waiting for the meal to start. The old scholar suddenly walked in from the side door and whispered something into the Marquis's ear. "Ha ha 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 ha." After a while, the bald Wade Fry laughed maniacally as he held the letter the scholar passed to him. Joy and mockery were evident on his face. "My lord, what good news do you have?" Black Wade, who was sitting at the head of the table, asked. Black Wade was the great-grandson of Marquis Wade and the main executor of the Bloody Wedding. Wade Fry was a man of honor. He was 91 years old this year, married 8 times and had more than 20 sons. Those sons helped him give birth to hundreds of grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Old Fry was the most prosperous person in Game of Thrones. This is big news that will shake the Western continent. On one side is the leader of the 9 free trade city-states, Bravos, and on the other is the world-famous Dragon Queen. They deserve to be remembered by the future generations. As for us Fry, hee. I love her to death, Dragon Queen. Third brother's wife, your daughter-in-law is about to give birth, right? The daughter will be called Danny Lees, and the boy will be called Dennis. Old Wade pointed at a bearded Fry and laughed. Grandfather, my wife is about to give birth too, said a bald middle-aged man at the next table. All right, they'll all be called Danny Lees. The white one will be called White Danny, and the black one will be called Black Danny. Ha! Cough, cough, cough. After panting for a while, the old man's weasel face was full of mockery. She should continue to wander around. It would be best if she visited the 9 city-states of the Western continent and all the castles of the Westeros counts and above. Don't bring any guards. Only then will it evoke the deepest and darkest desires in everyone's hearts. When everyone did the same thing, when it became customary to violate the rights of guests, he, Wade Fry, would no longer be the most despicable one. Thinking of this, old Wade slammed the table and shouted, "Go get a bottle of Qingting Island golden wine. Let's celebrate. Congratulations to the Dragon Queen. Congratulations to Xuecheng. Congratulations to the Great Titan." They might encounter ghouls and other ghosts. Danny didn't want to extort the Bravos people. She didn't lack 1 or 2 swords. She just wanted to make Geralt's trip safer. The key keeper was also very straightforward. After understanding the Dragon Queen's idea, he immediately agreed. Then the fat man, Bersalo, personally brought Geralt to the Iron Vault and let him choose 800 swords. There were 3,000 tile steel weapons in the world, and only 227 in the Westeros. The rest were mostly in the free cities. Bravos alone had more than 800 swords. Knives, swords, axes, spears, daggers, they had everything. At that time, Danny really understood how rich the Iron Vault was. Or rather, how profitable the faceless business was. Bersallo didn't want to hide the Iron Vault's wealth. Father Ma deliberately lived in a broken house, drank porridge, ate steamed buns and pickled vegetables, and then said that he lived a hard life and was a poor man. Would you believe it? Even the barbarians knew that the Iron Vault hid more than half of the world's gold. What was the point of hiding it? When Gerald was shocked and asked how the Iron Treasury was able to collect so many tile steel swords, the fat keykeeper also bluntly said, more than half of them were faceless ones' remuneration. Tile steel swords were a hard currency that far surpassed gold. They were easy to carry and were not that eye-catching. In fact, if it doesn't involve extraordinary power, tile steel swords have the same effect as Coer fine steel swords except that they are lighter. Only the Westeros knights like to use tile steel swords as weapons. In the free cities, tile steel swords are mostly used as payment for large transactions. The fat man, Bersallo, said. In fact, it was reasonable to think about it. Killing the infant dragon queen would cost 5 million gold royals. Dozens of tons of gold would need to be loaded into a large ship. Transporting it over thousands of miles was too ostentatious and too dangerous. As for opening an account with the Iron Vault, after depositing the gold from Slave Bay in Volantis, the Iron Vault charged the Dragon Queen 13% of the processing fee. 1 million gold royals and 130,000 gold royals to the Iron Vault. An ordinary person would not be able to bear it. To be honest, after knowing that the Iron Vault had 800 tile steel swords, Danny regretted it for a moment. She should have tried to get Gerald to hire 1 or 2 mercenary groups and set them up near the Iron Vault. With Blackie's help, maybe they could try robbing the Iron Vault. Well, the Iron Vault was built under a rocky mountain. The tunnel was narrow and deep. 2 dragons would not be able to rob the bank. Other than retrieving the spoils of war, Blackie also had the task of observing the movements of the Allied army. To be honest, Danny initially thought that a world war would not break out. Slave Bay and Queers were separated by the Purgatory Wasteland. It was more than 2,000 kilometers by land. Volantis was even further away from Slave Bay. Even if they risked crossing Valeglia, it would still be 2,500 kilometers. How long would it take for the Allied army of 100,000 to travel? How much pressure would the logistics be? Taking the sea route from New Gith, facing the Dragon Queen who had absolute control of the air, the blood of the Allied army could dye the Sea of Sorrows red. At that time, Danny felt that even if the Allied army was determined and had thousands of ships transporting resources, the war would only break out a year later. A year later, even the long night would come. What was the point of fighting? Unfortunately, she guessed wrong. The Allied army had already set off. Half of the fleet in Volantis port was gone. They had most likely sailed to New Gith. The navy would use New Gith as a bridgehead to attack Slave Bay. On the wide Valeglia road from Volantis to Materis, it was not packed with people. But every 10 kilometers, hundreds and thousands of mercenaries could be seen. The elephant carts, horse carriages, and ox carts that transported food formed a line that stretched for 4 to 5 kilometers. Screech Dahe carried 2 big bags and whizzed past the mercenaries 400 meters above their heads. Ah, Demon Dragon is attacking. Quickly push out the dragon-slaying crossbow. The mercenaries were shocked at first, but they quickly calmed down. They moved quickly and had a clear division of labor. Some of the archers opened the curtains on the carriages and pushed out the dragon-slaying crossbows. They adjusted the angle of the shooting holes and searched for the megalosaurus in the sky. The rest of the people spread out and hid in the fields on both sides of the black stone road to avoid the concentrated fire of the megalosaurus. I am the great guardian of light, I am the holy light, ah! The giant dragon suddenly opened its mouth to speak. It was too shocking. The mercenaries screamed in fear. While they were still far away from the shooting range, the dragon slayer crossbows were already shooting out bolts after bolts. The demon dragon is speaking. Gods! The mercenaries panicked. Some of them even cried. Seeing how terrified they were, Dani suddenly lost the mood to act cool. She said, Dragon Mother is virtuous. Let me give you a piece of advice. This is the road to death. The sea of blood is boundless. Turn back and you will be saved. Good, good. Then she left without looking back. Alright, this was already very pretentious. The black girl Larissa and the mercenaries below were all stunned. They were deeply shocked. Some of them even fell into deep thought, wondering if they should turn back and you will be saved. The sea of blood is boundless. Just the sound of it was terrifying. Flying over the plains of the Rhone River, the sky suddenly darkened. It was as if the sun above them was covered with a thick layer of cotton. Blackie entered the land of long summer. The sky was gray, and the barren land was covered with brown and red weeds. A straight Valeglia road led to Mataris. There were no demons. The mercenaries and caravans were endless on the black stone road, but none of them had been attacked by the demons. The scene outside Mataris city shocked Dani even more. Thousands of tents of various colors suddenly sprouted on the plains outside the city like mushrooms after the rain. There were also at least 30 square formations of thousands of people practicing martial arts. One of the elephant soldier phalanxes actually had over 1,000 giant elephants charging in a line. Almost every giant elephant had a crossbow installed on its back. Perhaps there were not enough dragons slaying crossbows. More than half of the elephants were only carrying a normal crossbow. The demon dragon is attacking. Soon, someone noticed the black dragon circling in the sky. For example, Lalo from the Song of Fire. The era before the first era belonged to the singers, to the gods, and the singers were the gods. The gods sang their own songs and formed a chorus with the other gods. This made the world prosperous and colorful. The Song of Law was the language of the gods. It was called the language of songs by the first era supernaturals. The melody of the great music was open to all creatures. The Holy Spirits understood and mastered the Song of Law. Other creatures were not as divine as the Holy Spirits. After listening to the melody of the great music, they could not learn their own songs. They could only instinctively record the chorus of the gods in their souls. Therefore, the original language was called the lesser language of songs. In fact, our Valeglia meditation rune was also a lesser language of songs. All the basic meditation runes of the human schools were lesser language of songs. The world played the great music. The gods listened to the melody of the great music and created their own Song of Law. When the humans were born, the gods had already formed a chorus. We could only listen to their songs and hope to find the original melody from their songs. Valeglia's meditation rune was fundamentally a lesser language of songs of fire. The fire mages were a level lower than the great wizards of Valeglia. They listened to my songs, the lesser of songs. Unlike the Targaryens, Miracis was truly one of Valeglia's own people. Jenny's explanation was very detailed, almost as if she was teaching. Well, to understand the difference between the Targaryens, Miracis, and Balerion, one could look at the Manchu regime. Before the rise of Valeglia, they were nomads in the land of long summer. A very weak, inferior, and primitive people. Valeglia equals Manchu's 14 Fire Peak families equals Isenjorno's 8 great families. Valeglia equals Majar, Tonga, Gur, Fucha, Nala, Nahuru, Waya, and other great families. Targaryens equals Manchu's Valerian, Setiga equals Manchu's hereditary Manchus. The people of the world ruled by Valeglia equals, well, everyone knows that. The free fortresses of Valeglia spread all over the world equals Banner City among the great cities of the Celestial Empire. The Targaryens were arrogant in front of outsiders, but in front of the 14 Fire Peak families, they were nothing. 400 years ago, the Targaryens' self-exile to Dragonstone Island was equivalent to the Emperor's royal guard in the Forbidden City being banished to the Ningu Tower. Well, at least the Targaryens still had a few dragons. They definitely deserved the title of Royal Guard. The black dragon was hatched from an Asha stone egg. I wouldn't be surprised if he awakened the source language from the depths of his bloodline, but he can speak the Valeglia language freely and fluently. The doubt on Jenny's face turned serious, and she said, "This means that his intelligence must be very high, surpassing the Megalosaurus of Valeglia. This is very scary." Benny had an idea, and asked, "Is it possible that Danny Lilith is speaking through the mouth of the Megalosaurus in the form of a dragon spirit?" "Impossible." Jenny immediately shook her head in denial, and said with certainty, "A dragon spirit is not a shapeshifter, and a Megalosaurus is not a normal animal companion. The will of a Megalosaurus cannot be distorted, and the dignity of a Megalosaurus cannot be blasphemed. We can only merge with the soul of a Megalosaurus and tell them what to do, but we can't control their body and usurp their will. Maybe Danny Lilith is in the form of a dragon spirit, and her soul is in the black dragon's soul realm. Maybe the black dragon's words are relayed to her, but the black dragon must have spoken by himself. Well, even the old monsters who have lived for thousands of years have never heard of two souls in one body and dual cultivation of ice and fire." Benny said, "Only holy spirits can comprehend their own songs from the grand movement, and become true gods from there." "Then, is it possible that Danny Lilith is a natural holy spirit?" "It should be," Jenny nodded, and said with certainty, "Since the birth of the first batch of living beings, for more than 10 million years of the first era, not a single holy spirit was born. But there are always exceptions. After the calamity of the long night, the second era began. As if blessed by fate, the land of long summer gave birth to 3 holy spirits, namely me, Vargas, and Mil-Eris, triplets, 3 brothers. After 6,000 years, not a single holy spirit was born. Maybe us 3 brothers are the only holy spirits who can listen to the grand movement. But Danny Lilith is the pinnacle of blood witchcraft in Valeglia. She only exists in prophecies, and is a miracle that cannot happen in theory. There is no doubt that her talent is better than mine and my 2 brothers. So, I guess she is also a holy spirit. So, Danny Lilith can also become a true god?" Benny was shocked. "True god?" Jenny laughed bitterly, "You think I am a true god?" "Of course you are a true god, even Lalo has to submit to you," Benny said respectfully. "Bullshit." The delicate priestess's face suddenly twisted, and she burst out. Tanner was afraid that the dwarf would be like some cowardly technical slaves, thinking that they couldn't live without their master. He was eloquent, trying his best to comfort and encourage him. He himself was an example. Tanner was once a scholar in the Great Pyramid. At that time, his ideological awareness was not high enough. He thought that without a master, he wouldn't be able to live a comfortable life. He was unwilling to regain his freedom and even begged the Dragon Queen to sell him again. Later, the Dragon Queen accepted him as a scribe and raised him for a year. Then, when he worked at the customs, he discovered one thing: the cost of raising him by the Dragon Queen was far less than the salary he deserved for his labor. So, he mustered up his courage, and with a nervous heart, he timidly went to the Dragon Queen and asked to terminate the support contract with her. The Dragon Queen gladly agreed and signed a new labor contract with him. He was truly independent and free. He became a civil servant in Astapor. His life was prosperous, and he was 10,000 times happier than when he was a slave for the slave owner of Gith. He was truly enlightened and understood how precious freedom the Dragon Queen had brought to these slaves. When he saw the little demon who was suspected of being a slave, it was like seeing his weak self in the past. He began to preach crazily. "Are you a slave?" Clinton stared at Tyrion and said coldly. The little demon opened his big mouth and revealed an ugly wry smile. He shook his head and said, "It's funny. I really wish I were an ordinary slave now." Unfortunately, he was not ordinary. If he lied, when the Dragon Queen found out about Lannister's identity, not only would Clinton and the others not intercede, but they would also add fuel to the fire. Then, he would most likely lose his deformed head. "Sigh, Inspector Donder, I'm really not a slave. Sir Clinton hired me in." The little demon turned around and glanced at Fenny, whose cheeks were red and eyes were watery. Fenny just looked at him and immediately lowered her head. Her face was even redder, and her blue eyes were even more watery. "Fenny and I are not husband and wife, and there won't be a little dwarf." The ugly dwarf without a nose hardened his heart and said calmly. Fenny's apple-like face immediately turned pale. "Since you are all performers performing for the Queen, then follow me." Donder greeted Clinton and the others with a wooden face. All of a sudden, he lost his previous eagerness. It seemed that if he was not a slave, the ugly dwarf's status would be lowered by 2 levels. This slave bay is interesting. The Dragon Queen has also piqued my interest. The little demon looked at Donder's back and said excitedly. "I always thought that she was trying to buy people's hearts, or that it was just the kindness of a young girl, just like my wife Sansa." The little demon glanced at Fenny who was beside him. He saw that she only pursed her lips, her eyes were not red and swollen, and there was no sadness in her eyes. He ignored her sadness. He was relieved. "What's wrong with your wife? What does she have to do with the Dragon Queen?" Little Griffin asked curiously. Tyrion smiled and said, "My wife Sansa is a kind beauty. She loves cats and dogs very much. But if there were really starving people who targeted her, she would immediately be like my sister, hoping that the King's Guard and the Golden Robes would be brave enough to kill all the rioters. This is the kindness of a noble girl. It's so cheap that it's not even comparable to the kindness of a prostitute. So, I'm very surprised. Compared to us, the Dragon Queen is like a weirdo. I heard that the Dragon Queen has an ancestor called Saint Baylor. Maybe he was a devout believer of the 7 gods like her," said Pogba, one of the Tile City's double absolutes. "Saint Baylor is brainless. He doesn't understand war and politics.